It's 5 o'clock, Madam Clerk. Please do the roll call.
Ms. Osiander? Mr. Gutierrez?
Here.
Mr. Honeman?
Here.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Mr. Starr?
Here.
Mr. Flynn? Present. Mr. Trainee?
Here.
Ms. Johnston? Here. Ms. Gray Jackson? Honored to be here. Mr. Birch is joining us on the phone. I don't think he's here yet. Mr. Birch? Okay, we'll put him as excused until he joins us. Ms. Drummond? Here. Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Fine. This is our meeting of October 12, 2010, regularly scheduled meeting. Next time is Pledge of Allegiance. Harriet, would you lead us in the pledge, ma'am, please?
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Harriet. Next item in business is minutes of previous meetings. We've got one. This is a meeting of September 14, 2010.
Second.
I think Debbie moved it.
Debbie moved. Her mic was on.
I know. I don't want to distress it. We've got minutes been moved and seconded. Is there any objection to the minutes as presented to us? Ask unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, Madam Clerk, those minutes are approved. We're down to the mayor's report. Mr. Mayor, sir, item 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things. First of all, I want to thank everyone who participated in the Mayor's Charity Ball over the weekend. It was a sold-out event and lots of money raised for a number of very worthy charities. We have a late-on-the-table item today, which I handed out to members 97, which is the travel report that Ms. Gray Jackson had requested, and because it was a comprehensive report, we're sharing it as an information memorandum. Also, you may have heard the news, but if not, because we're so keenly interested in energy issues and our future supply, Chevron, one of the major players in Cook Inlet, is selling their Cook Inlet assets. It was announced today, so we look forward to seeing who the new owner might be, and it's typical in an aging field that the larger companies will, at this stage, kind of sell out to the more wildcat-type companies, and it tends to spur both investment in exploration in fields like this, so we're kind of looking forward to that. And then finally, of course, you've probably all heard the sad news about firefighter Andrew Mullen losing his battle with cancer, and there will be a service at the Denina Center at 1 o'clock on Friday.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any questions for the Mayor from Assembly members? Doesn't appear to me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're now down to what? Mr. Birch, have you joined us, sir? He's lost in transit. Next item is Assembly Chair's report. There is none. Committee reports. Harriet, I'll start with you, ma'am.
No committee reports, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Jennifer, ma'am. Pat.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Hate to break the streak. Thursday, the 14th, just as a reminder, our Port Committee will reconvene at 9 a.m. in room 155. We'll be tackling, among other things, seismic issues. And that's all for today.
Thank you.
What time is that, Mr. Flynn?
9 a.m.
Thank you.
Bill.
Yeah, last week we had a joint meeting between the Budget Advisory Commission and the Budget and Finance Committee of this body. We had a pretty productive meeting. They got their budget packets and work assignments, which will be a little bit more in-depth for departmental reviews. I understand there's a couple departmental reviews by the Budget Advisory Commission scheduled for as early as tomorrow. That was productive. They seem energetic and well led by Mr. Trombley. So more to come. Cheryl and I have been talking, Ms. Frasca, I should say, have been talking about the amendment process, and we'll get back to some of the members that have interest on how to posture amendments and when those should come in front of us. So more to that. And my phone's always open if you guys have questions on the budget process or what's in that big book. We'll help you get the answer.
Well, thank you, Mr. Starr. I appreciate it. Ernie?
No report.
Paul?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a Public Safety Committee next schedule, and it's actually tomorrow, noon to 1, Assembly Conference Room. Talking with Health Department, Diane Inglis was a little bit shorted last meeting, and get a chance to talk about their role the Health Department plays in public safety, and asking all the departments an update, just a brief update of how they came about, their budget, and what their needs are, particularly any highlights, changes coming up the 2011 year anticipated.
Thank you.
And also got the chance briefly to go to the Lusac Manor demolition with AHFC, and was very pleased to be able to get a hard hat, and actually Mr. Fauski, the director, actually allowed me to take down a piece of a corner of one of those old buildings with a backhoe or track hoe, and it was kind of fun.
Good. Chris, are you on the phone, sir?
Yes, I am. I'm just going to let Paul know that I will not be available for the public safety meeting tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
And, we have a chamber board meeting on Friday morning.
Thank you, sir. Do you have any other committee reports?
Nope.
Thank you. Mike?
No report, Mr. Chairman.
Debbie? Welcome back, ma'am.
Thank you. The Title 21 committee is looking at calendar. We have been going through the recommended amendments from the planning department to the provisionally adopted chapters, and so we're trying to figure out now how to work with the administration's proposed changes. So within the week, there should be a new calendar put out for the Title 21 meetings.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate it. I know it's a lot of work, and it's good to see you back again, ma'am. If there are no other committee reports, we'll move on down. Then we're down to the addendum to agenda. I need a motion to incorporate.
So moved.
It's moved and seconded. I'll go through it. Item 9A2, Resolution AR 2010-296, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing October 2010 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month, from Assembly Member Gray Jackson. Item 9A3, Resolution AR 2010-297, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing October 2010 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and encouraging the residents of Anchorage to work together to eliminate domestic violence in our community. From Ms. Gray Jackson. Item 9A4, Assembly Resolution AR 2010-299, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing the 60th anniversary of the League of Women Voters of Anchorage. Assembly Member Osiander. Item 9B4, under Resolutions for Action, Resolution AR 2010-294, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $33,000 from the anticipated unearned program revenues from the Area-Wide General Fund 101 to the Purchasing Department Fund 101, 2010 operating budget for the payment of fees and expenses associated with the disposal of surplus excess municipal property, Purchasing Department. There's an Assembly memorandum along with this, AM 544-2010. Item 9B5, Resolution AR 2010-298, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating a contribution of $75,000 from the Area-Wide General Operating Fund 101, Employee Relations Department, to the Information Technology Capital Improvement Program, CIP Fund 608, Information Technology Department for the Electronic Timekeeping Project. There's an accompanying Assembly memorandum, AM 550-2010. Under bid awards, item 9C2, Assembly memorandum, AM 545-2010, recommendation of award to Hankinson Electric for 2010 lighting energy upgrades, 3 facilities for the Municipality of Anchorage, Maintenance and Operations Department, Capital Projects Division, ITB, 2010 C043. $641,405 in purchasing, an addendum. Item 9C3, Assembly memorandum, AM 546-2010, recommendation of award to Seacoast Construction Company, Inc. for the UMed Transit and Pedestrian Improvements, Phase 2, for the Municipality of Anchorage, Project Management and Engineering Department, TIB 2010 C053, $618,928 purchasing. Under new business, item 9D2, same memorandum, AM 547, 2010, change order number 1 to vendor contract number 2010 MLP 042 with Precast Concrete Company for the purchase of pre-manufactured concrete utility vaults and transformer pads for the Municipality of Anchorage. Municipal Light and Power $500,000 from purchasing. Item 9D3, Assembly Memorandum AM 548-2010, sole source repair purchase with NC Machinery Company to rebuild a Caterpillar D6 LGP dozer for the municipality of Anchorage Solid Waste Services, SWS, $227,048.22 in purchasing. Item 9D4, same memorandum, AM 551-2010, sole source purchase of time and attendance software licensing and licensing and maintenance support from Kronos, Inc. for the municipality of Anchorage, MOA, Information Technology Department, ITD, $468,012 in purchasing. On the back side, which one? I'm sorry. Just keep me straight, not a trouble. Item 9E5, Information Memorandum, AIM 108-2010, Monthly Investment Report to the Assembly, August 2010 from Finance. Item 9E7, Information Memorandum, AIM 108-2010, Monthly General Government Revenue Status Report to the Assembly, August 2010 from Finance. And then there was an item 9E7 that was given to us tonight. It's an AIM 110-2010 travel expenses. Dropping down to item 9F5 under ordinances and resolutions for introduction. Item 9F5B, Resolution Air 2010-292S, a resolution approving the 2011-2016 Municipal Utilities Enterprise Activities Capital Improvement Program, Office of Management and Budget, public hearing requested 10/26/2010, 11/9/2010, and 11/23/2010. Item 9F12 under resolution. This is resolution number AR 2010-295, a resolution adopting the 2011 Housing Community Development Annual Action Plan, which constitutes the application to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, for the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, for the Home Investment Partnership Program, HOME, and the Emergency Shelter Grant, SEG. This resolution appropriates the annual entitlement grants from HUD program income and recapture funds in the amount of $2,036,598. In the projected CDBG entitlement, $62,794, $1,068,582 in the Project Home entitlement, and $75,000 in the Project Home program income recaptured funds to the Department of Neighborhoods. And this resolution appropriates $85,000 of projected ESG entitlement to the Department of Health and Human Services Federal Grant Fund 241. Public hearing requested is 10/26/2010. There is an item 9F12A, a memorandum AM 549/2010. Under item 9F13, Ordinance AO 2010-78, an ordinance approving SunTrust Equipment Finance and Leasing Corporation, SunTrust, as the sole source of future financing for capital expenditures of the municipality in an amount not to exceed $20 million, retroactive to July 1st, 2010, from Finance. Public hearing requested on 10/26/2010. There's an accompanying item 9F13A, a same memorandum AM 552/2010. Item 14F2 under new public hearings, Ordinance AO 2010-68S, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code Chapter 10.50 by adding a new section on area conditions for land use by licensed premises. From Assembly Member Vice Chair Flynn. Anything anybody else wants to lay on the record, add to the document in front of us? If not, is there any objection the incorporation of the addendum to the agenda? Not seeing any. Madam Clerk, Chris, do you have any objection to the addendum to the agenda?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Got it online.
Madam Clerk, that's approved by the body. I'll now need a motion on the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'll now go to assembly members for a little further discussion. Harriet, we'll start with you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are we looking for items to pull from the consent agenda?
Yes, we are, and from the regular agenda, ma'am.
I have none at this time. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you.
But I would like to comment that I've heard considerable consternation from members of the Assembly about items making it onto the addendum agenda that are difficult to read and only available electronically on Friday afternoon. And I would appreciate it, as I know many of us would, getting those items in the notebook on Thursday or Friday of the week before. We just approved a calendar for the next year in the last meeting. We know when the meetings are. If there's an issue with the financial reports not being able to be ready in time, maybe those can come in the second meeting of the month. That may be an issue. I don't know how it works in getting those reports prepared, but getting them ready well ahead of time might be creating a time crunch for that particular department.
Well, thank you, Harriet.
Thank
We'll work on that, ma'am. I know it gets to be the point where you wonder if all the material's there before we start the meeting, and then we just have more stuff that comes in. We'll take a look into that, Harriet.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
ma'am. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 9, Apple 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer?
9, Apple 4.
Anything else, ma'am? Pat?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll depart from my usual practice and pull quite a few of these. On the regular agenda, item 9, Echo 2. On the addendum, items 9, Bravo 5, for agenda ordering purposes. Similarly, item 9, Delta 4. And then regarding Ms. Drummond's concern, items 9, Echo 5, and 9, Echo 6. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
They get there. Thank you, Pat. Bill?
9 Bravo 1.
School districts.
9A1.
Is that all, sir? Okay. Paul?
9 Alpha 3, 9A3.
Mike?
No items, Mr. Chairman.
Debbie, is there anything left you'd like to look at? Okay, the administration?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Item 9, Echo 7 from the addendum. It was late on the table item.
I know.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment on an item that is not being pulled. Is that appropriate now or after we approve the consent agenda? I apologize.
Whichever you'd like, ma'am.
9C1. I don't need to pull it. I have no discussion on it. I just want to comment on it.
How long of a discussion are you thinking about? Do you want to discuss it, or do you want
No,
to?
I wanted to thank the administration for moving it forward. This is the first I'd heard of it.
Thanks to the administration. That's good.
You're welcome.
Chris, do you have anything you want to pull?
No, it is.
Okay. Madam Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote on the consent agenda. Those items that were in the addendum, those items were not pulled for further discussion.
Ms. Drummond?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Birch? Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Johnston? Mr. Trainee?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn,
Yes.
Mr. Starr,
Yes.
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Honeman.
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Yes.
Ms. Osiander.
Yes.
It's unanimous, Mr. Chairman.
That was approved, ma'am. Thank you. We'll now go back to those items pulled for a little further discussion. The first one was pulled by LV. This is on the addendum to the agenda. It's Resolution Air 2010-296, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly. 9A1. Sorry. You're right. 9A1. I couldn't read. This is Breast Cancer Awareness Day. LV, do you want to make a motion on that, ma'am?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, but I believe that 9 Apple 1 was pulled by Mr. Hall, which comes before 9 Apple 2.
Okay. You're right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me. She's trying to tell me and I'm ignoring her. Okay. Item 9A1 was pulled by Ernie. It's Resolution Air 2010-280, the resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognized October 4th through 15th, 2010 as the Binational Health Week. Ernie, you want a motion on that, please, sir?
I would.
Second?
Ask unanimous consent. Seeing no objections, approved. Ernie, go ahead. Who's reading and who's presenting?
I'm reading.
I have the resolution to present if anyone from the Hispanic community is in the audience.
Is anybody? Okay. So, Ernie, you're going to read?
Yes, I am. A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing October 4th through the 15th, 2010 as Binational Health Week in Anchorage, Alaska. Whereas health is an essential asset for the economic and social development of the city of Anchorage, Alaska, and whereas Anchorage is strengthened by a large representation of Hispanic communities which require broader access to health care services, and whereas health care of immigrant workers and their families concern both the United States and Mexico, and therefore a binational approach is needed, and whereas Binational Health Week is one of the largest mobilization efforts of federal and state government agencies, community-based organizations, and volunteers in the Americas to improve the health and well-being of the underserved Hispanic population living in the United States, and whereas the Consulate of Mexico in Anchorage, Alaska, the Municipality of Anchorage Department of Health and Human Services, United Way of Anchorage, the State Department of Health and Social Services, the Anchorage Neighborhood Health Center, Catholic Social Services, the Hispanic Affairs Council, the Hispanic Ministry Archdiocese of Anchorage, the Latino Lions Club, and others have partnered for the Binational Health Week of the week of October 4th through 15th, 2010. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizes October 4th through the 15th, 2010, as the Binational Health Week in Anchorage, Alaska, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 12th day of October, 2010.
Very good.
Thank you very much. I am Javier Abud Osuna, Consul of Mexico in Anchorage. I am deeply honored to receive now the resolution of the Anchorage Assembly recognizing October 4-15 as Binational Health Week. This resolution not only represents the interests of the municipality of Anchorage to enhance the well-being of our Hispanic community, but it also represents the strengthening of the relationship between Anchorage and Mexico. I am sincerely grateful to Chairman Dick Trainey and all the distinguished members of the Anchorage Assembly, to Mayor Dan Sullivan for his outstanding support, and to Diane Ingle for her remarkable work done as Director of the Anchorage Department of Health and Human Services, and her staff, of course, as well as several agencies. Currently, the BHW is being held in more than 300 cities and towns in 40 U.S. states and 3 Canadian provinces. It will provide services and education to about 1 million underserved Latino people in the United States and Canada. A country's health depends on the well-being of its entire population. If the underserved population, including immigrants and their families, has good health, both the underserved population and the entire country benefit. Therefore, the Binational Health Week in Anchorage, for the very first time, will provide the community with the opportunity to benefit from its events and services to promote a healthier future that will reflect in the economic and social development of the city of Anchorage. I thank you again for this recognition, and I look forward working together towards a healthier future for the Hispanic community in Anchorage, in particular for the Mexican community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for being here. We appreciate it. Thank you. Next item in front of us, we'll see if I can get this one right, is item 9A2. Resolution Air 2010-296, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing October 2010 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Elby, I think you did pull that one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to approve.
Second.
Ask unanimous? Should no objection, that's approved. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, I would like to have my name added to actually Alpha 2, 3, and 4, and I imagine everybody, all the Assembly.
All of us
That's
added.
correct.
Yes, thank you.
We'll make that unanimous across the board, ma'am. Elby, you made the motion. It was seconded. We have unanimous consent. Who's reading and who's presenting?
I'm reading, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mike? There you are, sir.
A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing October 2010 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas in the United States, 1 in 8 women will develop breast cancer in her lifetime. And whereas, according to 2006 statistics gathered by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Alaska's breast cancer incidence rate was between 119 and 126 women out of 100,000. And whereas 2006 statistics published by the Alaska Department of Health and Social Services lists cancer in its various forms as the leading cause of death for Alaskans since 1993. And whereas less than 1% of all new breast cancer cases occur in men, approximately 1,970 new cases of invasive breast cancer will be diagnosed in men this year in the United States. And whereas, though death rates have been decreasing since 1991, about 39,840 women are expected to die from breast cancer this year in the United States. And whereas the death rate decrease is thought to be the result of treatment advances, early detection through screening, and increased awareness. And whereas there are more than 2.5 million breast cancer survivors in the United States. And whereas many local residents are working to provide quality services and assistance to breast cancer survivors through programs including education, treatment, and support. And whereas breast cancer affects every person within the municipality of Anchorage, whether as a victim or survivor of breast cancer, or as the family member, significant other, neighbor, or co-worker of a victim or survivor of breast cancer. And whereas, due to the prevalence of breast cancer, we must work together as a community to increase public awareness and to educate our population about breast cancer early detection, treatment measures, and support services. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizes October 2010 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month and encourages the residents of Anchorage to support those affected by breast cancer in our community.
Hi, my name is Penny Palmquist. I'm a 6-year breast cancer survivor. And on behalf of the American Cancer Society, all of its staff workers, and all the wonderful volunteers across the state of Alaska, we'd like to thank the municipality of Anchorage and your members and Mayor Sullivan on our behalf of giving us this wonderful resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions, ma'am. Harriet?
I have no
or
question, but
comments?
thank you for coming, and thanks to Ms. Gray Jackson for bringing this forward. I pulled out my day timer and marked on it to make an appointment this week with my health care provider and get my mammogram scheduled. So thank you very much. I hope everybody who's listening pulls that out and does that right now. Thanks.
I think one other thing I'd like to point out, that the new statistics through the American Cancer Society is 1 in 3 women will be diagnosed with some type of cancer in their lifetime, and 1 in 2 men. So we highly recommend you all get your proper screenings. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. There are other questions. Appreciate it. Next item in front of us is off the addendum to agenda. It's item 9A3, Resolution Air 2010-297, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing October 2010 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. That was pulled by Pat. Did you pull that? Paul pulled that one. Okay.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second? Ask unanimous. Seeing no objection, that's approved. Who's presenting and who's reading?
I'm doing the reading, sir. Similar resolution number 210-297, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing October 2010 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month and encouraging the residents of Anchorage to work together to eliminate domestic violence in our community. Whereas, earlier this year, the University of Alaska Anchorage Justice Center conducted a statewide survey of women in Alaska regarding domestic violence and sexual violence. And whereas in late September 2010, the University of Alaska Anchorage Justice Center released 2010 Alaska Victimization Survey, thereby providing the first definitive measurement of the incidence and prevalence of violence against women in Alaska. And whereas due to the prevalence of domestic violence crimes, municipal and state leaders have responded with recent legislation combating domestic violence. And whereas with the approval of AR 2010-114 on April 13, 2010, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly supported Governor Parnell and the 26th Alaska State Legislature's comprehensive legislation to combat domestic violence. And whereas Alaska Attorney General Dan Sullivan shared at a luncheon in May 2010 the state's new initiative to reduce domestic violence and sexual assault in Alaska over the next 10 years, titled Strategic Plan to End the Epidemic of Sexual Assault and Domestic Violence. And whereas on October 6, 2010, during Mayor Dan Sullivan's weekly press conference, the Anchorage Police Department's Captain Bill Miller described the Anchorage Domestic Violence Prevention Project as the most effective law enforcement tool developed to respond to domestic violence. And whereas the Anchorage Domestic Violence Prevention Project is a collaborative partnership between the Municipality of Anchorage Health and Human Services Department, the Municipality of Anchorage Prosecutors, Anchorage Police Department, and the Abused Women's Aid in Crisis or Awake Shelter, and is an intervention for holding domestic violence offenders accountable and increasing victim safety. And whereas Captain Bill Miller also credited the coordinated efforts between the 2 APD compliance officer and the municipal prosecutor's office with increasing arrests for violations of conditions of release by 139%, based on the Anchorage Domestic Violence Prevention Project's data assessed between mid-2007 through October 31, 2009. And whereas at the October 6, 2010 press conference, Assistant Municipal Prosecutor Joanne Chung shared that the Anchorage Domestic Violence Prevention Project contributes to the increased success of the Municipality of Anchorage's prosecutor office, that recidivism by offenders has decreased from 24% to 17%, and explained that the amount of time to bring cases to trial has decreased due to support for victims and compliance checks for offenders. And whereas residents, law enforcement, and local and state leaders are working to provide effective services and assistance to domestic violence survivors through education, support, and advocacy services. And whereas we must continue to work together as a community to increase public awareness and to educate residents about domestic violence prevention measures. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly joins President Barack Obama in recognizing October 2010 as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and encourages the residents of Anchorage to work together to eliminate crimes of domestic violence in our community. Passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 12th day of October 2010.
Thank you. My name is Christina Janko. I'm the founder of Families Against Domestic Violence. I am honored to be here this evening, and we're grateful to the Assembly for taking the time to recognize Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Domestic violence is a serious epidemic in the state of Alaska and in the city of Anchorage, but it is my hope that if we continue to work together, we can continue to do great things. Thank you.
We have a few questions for you, ma'am, if you don't
Sure.
mind. Paul?
Yes, Ms. Jenko, thanks again for being here. And in my past life, of course, I worked, unfortunately, with too many domestic violence victims and families and people who are affected by domestic violence. And, we just had 2 other previous resolutions regarding health in our community. And I believe this is a serious health issue and health risk to many people in our community, and very appropriate that we can join in recognizing domestic violence awareness. I have an anecdotal story, but I won't bore you the length of it. It's just a tremendous story I heard 12 years later, 12 years after the fact, where I helped a lady out in a domestic violence relationship issue, and she sent me a card. She kept saying every year that she intended to do that, and about 12 years later, and it really brought home that, that yes, we can make a difference by helping people. So thank you.
Thank you. Harriet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for coming and for the important work that you do in this community. I've been hearing a lot of radio commercials featuring a fireman or a medic that says, if you think you're having a heart attack, call me. I don't care if you actually don't have a heart attack. When we medics get there, I'm trying to repeat the commercial, but it's just been drilled into my head. He says, I'd much rather treat you alive than find a dead person from a heart attack. Somehow it seems to me that our police department and our other public safety folks ought to be able to help the community understand that when they hear sounds of a domestic violence action taking place next door, across the street, in your apartment building, that they should not hesitate, but they should call the police department to put a stop to this, or at least come and investigate and just do a safety check on that, in that situation. I've heard some horrible stories and read some horrible stories about people who are afraid to report these things because they think they're going to get in trouble. I'm pretty sure that the medics commercial is a public service announcement and is easy to put together and cheap to air, if not free, because it's a PSA. So I would appreciate it if the folks in your that work in your area would look at getting something like that out there and alerting people that they really shouldn't wait to see an injured person getting removed from the home or any of that stuff, but just call and have it done.
Governor Parnell last year at the opening ceremonies of Domestic Violence Awareness Month likened it to Mothers Against Drunk Driving, where if, it became a very big campaign, and if we all work together and not keep it a secret anymore, that hopefully we'll be able to make the same progress that they have with the epidemic of drunk driving.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, ma'am.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Do we lose Chris? I heard it beep, and I just wonder if we lost him. Okay. Next item in front of us is item 9A4, Resolution AR 2010-299, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing the 60th anniversary of the League of Women Voters of Anchorage. Jennifer, I think you pulled that one, ma'am.
Second.
Ask unanimous. Should no objection, that's approved. Jennifer, are you presenting or reading? Or
I'm reading.
Who's presenting? Debbie. I should have known.
A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing the 60th anniversary of the League of Women Voters of Anchorage. Whereas founded in 1920 by Carrie Chapman Catt, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization whose purpose is to encourage active and informed participation in government and to influence public policy through education and advocacy. And whereas organized in 1950 by the late Evangeline Atwood, the League of Women Voters of Anchorage celebrates its 60th anniversary this year. And whereas historically members of the League of Women Voters of Anchorage have influenced state and local policy throughout the years, contributing to the formation of the State Borough Act in 1961, the formation of the Greater Anchorage Area Borough in 1964, the writing of the State Unification Act, the writing of the Charter for the Municipality of Anchorage, and the unification of the former city of Anchorage and the Greater Anchorage Area Borough. And whereas throughout the years, the League of Women Voters of Anchorage has conducted many studies on local government issues, such as planning and zoning, including comprehension plans, education, community councils, boards, and commissions. And whereas presently the League of Women Voters of Anchorage strives to be an organization where hands-on endeavors to safeguard democracy lead to civic improvement. And whereas the League of Women Voters of Anchorage membership includes elected officials and appointees to numerous Anchorage and state boards and commissions, now therefore 4. The Anchorage Municipal Assembly resolves that the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizes the contributions made by the League of Women Voters of Anchorage over the past 60 years, extends congratulations to members of the League of its 60th anniversary, and offers best wishes for the continued success of the League in the future. Passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 12th day of October, 2010.
Honored to sponsor.
Oh, my. Mr. Chairman, members of the Assembly, Mayor Sullivan, thank you for recognizing the League, and it's an honor to accept this on behalf of the League. I am Pat Redmond, and I am currently the president of the League for Anchorage. I was going to mention that, over the years we've done things like the comprehensive plan. We've been following the Title 21 as it's progressing through, and I'm sure we'll be here when it finally, through the last stages. Sometimes I wonder if these things ever end. And then I was going to mention a few of the things we've done, but most of them are in here. Over the years, we did the ballot review from 1992 to 2008. We didn't do one 2009. We didn't do one in 2010 because we didn't have funding, but we're working on funding for 2011. We also are doing the Youth Vote Project with the Anchorage School District, and that this year we do that in general election years, and that involves all the Anchorage School District schools. And we continue to encourage people to be educated and voting, and that they vote with information, that they understand what they're voting on. We also want them to participate. My hobby is harassing local government, and I'd like to see that everybody's hobby. So thank you.
We have a few questions, ma'am, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Ms. Drummond?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for coming, Pat. I really appreciate the work that you do, and I do recall the conversation we had at the Turnagain Community Council the other night. What was the source of the funding that ended in 2009? Last time you did it?
The last time we did it was 2009. Mm-hmm. We usually did a contract with the municipality to prepare and print the ballot review. Last year we did it electronically, but that doesn't reach. There are people who just don't go online, and so we always did an insert in the Anchorage Daily News, the Anchorage Press, and the Alaska Star. Mm-hmm. To reach those people. And we also distribute it through the library, sometimes in wherever we could put it out into public. And we had a number of calls about it. I am currently working in a temporary position with the Division of Elections, and when I went in there, the first question was, why didn't you do the ballot review? Because they had a lot of calls also in April, even though it's not in their area. So I know that people are still interested in receiving that type of publication.
Oh, yeah. I missed it, even though I pay more attention to this than most people do, and I know the information. I did miss seeing it, and I appreciate you working to get it there. And I think the best thing we as an assembly can do is find a way to find some money to help this organization do this. We can talk offline. As a graphic designer, I've got some ideas on how to save printing costs.
Mr. Honeman has a question, ma'am, or comment?
Mostly a comment. Thank you. I really appreciate that the League is nonpartisan, and I think that's a real tell, particularly in the municipal offices and elected offices. I don't mind certainly being harassed, but certainly I just like people being participating, and whatever the League can do, I'm fully supportive of that, to get people more participative in their all forms of government, all levels of government.
Thank you for reminding me that the League, not reminding me, but helping me to remember that, to remind people that it is nonpartisan. We do not support candidates. We only present the information, and we present information on issues. So, and we try to make, if it's an issue that we don't have a position on, that there are some things that we have strong positions on, and we will let you know. But if it's something else, we're also going to try and make sure that both sides of the issue are heard. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Flynn, sir. Chris, did you have a comment you wanted to make? Sorry, sir. Go ahead.
I just want to say I like the hat.
Oh, thank you, Chris.
Watch out, he's watching.
Yeah, oh gee.
Pat?
I just have a real brief. Pat, between you and your sister, I get harassment enough. Please don't encourage anybody
Oh,
else.
sorry. No, it's fun to harass you.
Yeah. Good to see you, Pat. Thank you for coming out.
Thanks for being here, and what you do is just remarkable. I know my wife was once called by the Anchorage Press a community terrorist for her activity.
Perfect.
Relative to a liquor license, and I think that's great.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item in front of us is item 9B1, Resolution AR 2010-280, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly regarding the annual operating budget of the Anchorage School District for its fiscal year 2011-2012. Mr. Starr, you pulled that, sir.
Yeah, I move to refer this to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Who's that from?
Ernie.
What? Okay. Bill, you want to?
Yeah, I believe that's appropriate action. I like the draft, but I think it requires some committee work. I would say additional committee work, but we haven't talked about it yet. I also think there's some work that needs to be done that we identified at a previous Budget and Finance Committee meeting, which is to talk with the CFOs on that. Currently, the Anchorage School Districts got a budget shortfall on the books, and I think there's a discrepancy in just what the extent of that budget shortfall is. So it would be challenging to try to provide some budget guidelines without having a resolution that sort of speaks to the addressing of that topic. I see other issues that relate to currently there's a reduced enrollment, and I think an analysis of the reduced enrollment on their current budget with the concept that we have a continuation budget. It's hard for me to recommend spending limits or advice on that. The resolution also speaks to combining or transferring some pass-through expenses such as the SRO program, Student Resource Officers, and I'd like to see something perhaps from the Public Safety Committee or the school district themselves speaking to the benefits of taking over that program entirely. And then thirdly, we're also dealing with some fiscal challenges of our own as it relates to the additional revenue of the cigarette tax, ramifications on the tax cap. So final was that the BAC asked for a chance to sort of have a comment on what the school district's recommendations on their spending plan was to be. That was their request at the last meeting. So I think we can get it into the committee and we can bring back something that speaks to all that.
We'll have a lively debate. I've got a bunch of people waiting to talk on this issue. My question is, how long do you want to send it back to committee? When is the date that we would anticipate to be back in front of this body?
Well,
send back to committee.
I'd like to make sure we get some action item either at the 26th meeting or the 9th. You know, mind you, we've got a work session on the 22nd that's going to be pretty detailed from departmental reviews, but when the school district needs it, I would imagine is sometime the first half of November. So ideally the 26th, if we had it back on the table here before the 26th
of October, sir?
Correct, or the latest would be the 9th to take action.
Okay, let me move on to those that want to discuss it. Ms. Gray Jackson, on the issue to
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes. First off, I want to thank Ms. Johnson for bringing the resolution forward because I talked about doing it and she beat me to it. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I think it's pretty good, well-done resolution, and quite frankly, I don't see any reason to postpone moving on this tonight unless the school district may have some comments on whether or not we should postpone it since it does affect their budget. Mr. Chairman, if you would...
you can take the latitude if you want.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to hear what the school district has to say about postponing this resolution.
Well, Carol's never been known to be shy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. And the school board president? We get two.
Yeah.
Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol Como. I'm the superintendent. Mr. Trainee, Mr. Gray Jackson, the board needs to set the upper limit of the budget so that we can begin our budget process no later than November 15th. And we have a meeting scheduled for November 15th. So obviously our preference would be action tonight if the resolution is going forward, which we very much appreciate, by the way. It helped us a lot last year. But if that is not to be the case, then we would hope for an expeditious review, as you described, because we really do need to begin our budget process in earnest.
Mr. Chair, I'm John Steiner, President of the School Board. The important thing, as Ms. Como said, is that we know where we stand when we go to budget, and that's what's really critical. As far as whether the committee comes back and gets more input from us, I'm not sure what the assumptions of the maker of the motion is, and I think it is true that it is relevant for the Assembly to understand the implications of whatever you're voting on. I think right now we're looking at, from information that I got earlier today, a potential shortfall of about $27 million, which may be mitigated by the jobs bill that came out of Washington, D.C. to take it back down to about $20 million. And that's real rough today of some numbers that were presented to me. I think it's important for you folks to know that, and if it's important for the committee to take something more, as far as the school board, I don't have anything. Our board hasn't taken a formal action one way or the other, so I don't have a formal position from the board. But it is important to the board, I know from past discussions, that we have a good sense of where we stand with the Assembly before we go to budget. So as Ms. Como said, I very much agree that the 15th is a sort of a deadline, so the 9th, if it didn't come back to you until the 9th, that would be somewhat problematic because it's really getting tight for us. So.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Jennifer, you're next in line, ma'am.
Yes, but as the maker of this resolution, and Mr. Starr and I have had some long discussions about it, and I have no problem with it going back to committee, but I do think, as far as the timeliness, I think it needs to be back on our table by the 26th, because I think it's only fair to the school district and fair to all of us as far as the budget planning. This is something that's been in discussion for most of the summer and fall, and we all have a lot on our plates, but I think it's time to have some action and have some parameters for the school district to start creating their budget. And so I would strongly encourage October 26th if we are going to postpone it.
Thank you, Jennifer. Ernie?
Yes, I would like to see it go back to committee. This is my first time through this process, but I'm really not comfortable as exactly where we are with the municipal budget, and it seems to me we need to be somewhat in sync with that, with what we do with the school district. So I have a feeling that by that time we have a little better idea about where we're going to be with our budget.
Thank you. Mr. Gutierrez?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to echo to a great degree what Ms. Johnston said. Having a resolution like this last year made our portion of the school budget process go so much more smoothly than it had in the past, and I think it was much more productive for us. It was better for the school district. I am willing to support a delay, but I would like the delay to be no longer than the meeting of the 26th. If we're going to delay longer than that, I think we're unnecessarily tinkering with the process or slowing the process down.
Thank you. Pat?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll support the delay for 2 weeks. And when the Budget and Finance Committee takes this matter up, I've got an amendment I passed out. I'd appreciate them taking that amendment up for consideration as part of their deliberations.
Thank you. No other comments. Bill, since no other comments, I've got one. I want to see this back in front of us on the 26th. I'll support you, sir, sending this back, but I want it back on the 26th for action.
Yeah, I just need to get some affirmation on the record that we'll have some information a little more candid from your CFO. I can't remember Chad's last name, but I'd really like to get Ms. Mahoney and the ramifications of the SRO. I'd like to quantify that number. So if you guys have, I'm not sure what you do with the officers in the summertime in terms of your budget as you took that. So I've got some specific requests, and you just want the CFOs to handle that information so we can get some quantifiable data back to the committee, or what would be your recommendation, Ms. Como?
Mr. Starr, I think if you have specific questions or anybody has a specific questions, if you can get them to my office, I will absolutely get them to our CFO, and I do think the two CFOs can get together. We're happy to provide any information, any questions you need answered if we knew what the questions were. So please get those to us.
Those are some of my concerns, of course. I'd like to have the committee speak to it. Mr. Flynn just put a 1.6 number in there as opposed to the 2.5, so we also want to quantify some of that. So as you can pass this recommendation through to that, you should have the latest.
Sure, I will do that. Chad's here, so we can do that.
Great. We'll start tomorrow.
So do you want us to contact Ms. Mahoney about a meeting, or I'm trying to get, since we have 2 weeks, is basically what I'm hearing.
I'll have our committee structure that. I know that there was still some questions as we handed out the worksheet at the last Budget and Finance Committee meeting, the joint one we had with your group, Mr. Steiner's group. I think your CFO was there. There was not a clarification on the budget shortfall being anywhere between 21 and 17.5 million. So if we kind of knew where that was at, quantifiably, he was supposed to get that back to Ms.
Well, we're still working on it because our enrollment is continually working through. So we are happy to get you what we've got, but as you know, a point in time is exactly what it is, and our funding count period doesn't end until October 22nd as far as the state. That's what locks in our funding for this year. Sure. We're in the beginning stages of making our projections as far as student enrollment for next year, which we anticipate being relatively flat.
We need to move this on.
And I do, and I appreciate that. That's enough on the record. We'll work it out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer, any comments before we...
I just wanted a point in clarification as far as Mr. Flynn's amendment. It's a little different in that he's suggesting that their budget be increased by 1.6, and my resolution has their budget as flat. So I just, as you directed to committee, you've got two different things there. Thank you.
Thank you. Ask unanimous consent to send this back with a recommendation strongly that we want it back by the 26th. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, that item is approved by the body of the action. We are now on to item 9B5 under the addendum, Resolution AR 2010-298, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly appropriating a contribution of $75,000 from the area-wide General Operating Fund 101. This is electronic timekeeping project. Pat, you pulled that, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move to postpone consideration of this item until after we have taken up item 14P, as in Paul. And just to explain...
Is there a second?
Second. Just to explain for the body's edification, this relates to the fund sources actually contained in 14P. We need to actually have that fund source in place before we start allocating dollars, and we'll do the same thing with item 9 Delta 4.
Any objection? Seeing none, that item will come up when we get down, when we're down to item 14P. Next one is item 9D4, same memorandum AM 551-2010, sole source purchase of time and attendance software licensing and maintenance support from Kronos Inc.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Same motion.
Is there a second? Same rationale. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that will come up on item 14 after 14P. Moving to back to the regular agenda. It's on page 2, item 94, information memorandum AIM 105-2010, executive appointments and compensation. Pat, I had you pull that, sir.
Yes, you did, Mr. Chairman. Per your request, move to postpone consideration of this item until our next meeting on October 26th.
Is there any objection? That will come up at our next meeting. That's approved by the body. Next item in front of us is on the addendum to the agenda, item page 2. It's item 95, information memorandum AIM 1008-2010, monthly investment report to the Assembly. Pat, you pulled that one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, could we please postpone this one to our meeting on the 26th, just to give members sufficient time to review this information in detail?
Is there a second?
Second.
Any objection? Seeing none, that will come in front of us on the 26th. The next one is item 9E6, information memorandum AIM 109-2010, monthly general government revenue status report to the Assembly.
Mr. Chairman, same motion, same reasoning.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ask unanimous, so no objection, that'll come up. Mr. Starr, did you object, sir?
Just to be sure we dial in the BAC on the review of that, they were inquiry, and we directed them as the Chair of Budget and Finance to have their opinion on these reports and their weigh in as well. So you get them to Mr. Trombley, and he'll forward them out for recommendation or review. So it's not another step in the process, but just helpful to have another 9 eyes working the report. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any objections? Seeing none, that item will come back in front of us on the 26th. We're now down to item 9E7, AIM 110-2010 travel expense pulled by the mayor. Mr. Mayor, sir.
Yes, if Assemblyman will make a motion to accept, I'll speak to it.
Moved and accepted, seconded. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I just wanted to brag a little bit about the department heads who have really done an outstanding job of containing costs in their departments as regards to travel. Ms. Gray Jackson had requested the report, and we presented it as an information memorandum to you. And as you can see, literally in just a year's time, we've gone from travel in the $529,000 range to we're about at $86,000 for 2010 to date, and a tremendous amount of savings to the taxpayer, and also a great due diligence by the various departments in containing costs. And just important to give them the thank you for all the hard work, and also for our cost containment committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Honeman and Ms. Jackson. Mr. Honeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the report. I just read with some note, real quick, just looking through the notes here. It appears that, for instance, purchasing in 2008, 2009, and current year has actually like 0 travel. Is that correct? Looking on page 3 of 6.
Yes, if that's what it reads, sir.
Good deal. I guess, again, out of curiosity for information-wise, when we look at, I'm trying to find the right page here, look at the mayor's office, it looks like there's still some travel going on in different divisions and different departments. Of course, I'm assuming it's to do with the professional training, experience, knowledge that can't be gained in Anchorage or in Alaska. Is that pretty much on par? The travel that's going on now is necessary travel for training or professional development?
Yeah, we don't allow unnecessary travel, sir.
Okay. And, okay, that's his question. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to thank the mayor for making this an AIM to share with my colleagues, and also OMB for providing this information as quickly as they have. And, as a matter of fact, what this report shows is exactly what I thought it would. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ask unanimous acceptance of this. Seeing no objection, the item is approved by the body. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing it to us. Next item on the agenda is item 12A. Under appearance request, may begin no earlier than 6 and no later than 6:30. We're on track. This is Linda Hendrickson on behalf of the Chugach Eagle River Senior Center to express thanks for continual support, and that's nice. Come on forward and talk to us. Ma'am, turn your mic on. And these are all Miss Felly of Anchorage people. We've dealt with that issue before.
It's the other senior center.
The other center. Okay. Now that makes sense, Debbie. Welcome to the body. Thank you guys for being here.
Good evening, the esteemed members of the Assembly and the Mayor and all of our municipality friends. We wanted to take this opportunity to come tonight and just thank you. We are the other senior center out there in Chugach. 35 years ago, a small group of people met together. There was about 4 of them in a small cabin. And they soon found that there was quite a few things that they needed to take care of. As seniors, are problem solvers. And so they needed a phone, and there was no way for them to get one. So they put a sign on the corner that simply said 688. They were in hopes that someone would stop and ask where the rest of the number was so that they could ask for funding for that project. 35 years later, we have over 30 landline phones. We have 55 employees. We serve over 4,000 meals. We have 600 rides per month for our seniors, which are provided by our transportation. We have 44 apartments. We have 21 assisted living. We have 20 low-income apartments, and we're growing. The need is just tremendous. The board and its members are very much aware of the shoulders on whom we stand, And that's the people that have gone before us and have sacrificed for the progress of the center. And you've been a big part of that for us. The municipality, our liaison in the municipality, the mayor, the assembly members, our local representatives, the senators, everyone helping us to achieve our dreams at the center. As we move forward, we still have more hopes, more dreams. We have a 35-year-old building that we're in hopes that we're going to be able to renovate. We're working on that. And we know that we're going to be able to count on you to support us in those dreams. Our mission is to serve seniors, to train staff, and be good stewards of the funds that we've been entrusted with. May we always be found worthy of your trust and confidence. I'm proud to stand up here with over I had to recalculate, 920 years of experience standing behind me. And I'm very proud to be the executive director and to try to help them to achieve those dreams. May you all be blessed for the honor that you've given our most valued resource in this state, and that's our seniors. And we all thank you so much.
We have some questions from Assembly members, if you don't mind. Go ahead, sir.
I just wanted to mention the fact that it's one thing that every one of us and every one of you have to look forward to, is becoming a senior. And
some of us are already there.
Yes, I realize that. And we just want to thank the board of directors. I represent the board of directors, and I just want to thank every person here, and the mayor included, and Mr. Vacalis, the support that you have given us out there, and we just appreciate it.
My clerk needs to get your name for the minutes, sir.
Ted Carlson.
Former assemblyman, Ted.
I know,
okay.
But I had to have it on the record, Debbie.
All right.
Where do you represent again, Debbie?
She represents Muldoon. Part of it you do.
A tiny sliver.
Tiny sliver. Mr. Honeman, you have comments, sir?
Well, that was part of it. I wanted to take a few moments to recognize one of the people responsible for me working at Anchorage Police Department, retired captain and former Assemblyperson Ted Carlson. And if memory serves me, Mr. Captain, is you actually were at one time served as the director of the Senior Center.
Yes, I was. Yes.
And thank you for your service, not only to our community, but continuing to the senior community at the Senior Center. I know there's a lot of challenges coming up, like, say, 35-year-old building. I know a lot of renovations and things like that. Look forward to see some of the plans as we go through and what we can do to assist you.
And I would like to invite everybody out there to join us. I mean, we have a wonderful lunch every day from 11:30 to 1, and I would love to have you come out and be our guest for lunch someday.
Thank you. Debbie?
Thanks, Ted. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Because so often we get invited, I think we've all been to the Anchorage Senior Center, but I hazard a guess that there aren't many Assembly people who've been far enough north to recognize the jewel we've got in Shugiak. So I hope that they come. You do serve great meals, too.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, sir?
Yes, thank you. I'm going because there's bingo. Okay. And you can't let Ted win all the bingo money. So, well, obviously, this is one of our assets that we value, and we'll continue to work as hard as we can with you to make sure that facility stays as viable. And I know we've been working on a project out there with the electrical outlets outside for the plug-ins, and I think, George, are we done? We pretty much ready to, yeah. So we're pleased to get that done before winter hits.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank all of you beautiful, smiling faces for being here this evening. And I especially want to recognize Mr. Carlson, who was one of the 42 Assembly members that I worked with when I was staff for 18 years. It's really nice to see you, and you look the same. Thank you.
I think he represents almost the majority of the 900-plus years of this. No, I'm just it was just a myth, Captain, just a myth.
Mr. Hall, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would point out that Mr. Starr is anxiously trying to recruit me to become a member of your facilities. He figures I'm quite old enough to qualify for that. But what I'd really like to point out is not only has Mr. Carlson given service in the past, he continues to serve this community on the Anchorage Community Development Authority Board and does an incredible job. So thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carlson, I had the pleasure of working with your son on Elmendorf for a while. So.
Pardon?
I had the pleasure of working with your son on Elmendorf for a while.
Yes, you did. I appreciate
Heard lots
that.
of things about you.
All good, right?
All good. Thank you guys all for being here, because eventually the rest will get as old as we are. You know, as I was talking with my grandsons, he says, "Grandpa, how old was your grandfather when he died?" And I said, "Why do you want to know?" He says, "Because I want to know how old you were so I can figure out how long you're still around." Anyway, it's nice to see you guys here. If we can help at all, let me know.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The next item is item 12B. Mr. Hayek's fifth grade, and I probably mispronounced it, fifth grade class at Rogers Park Elementary School to speak about Anchorage's problem of panhandling. Come on forward, kids. Oh, there's got to be more kids in here than just you three. There's one down there. Isn't she part of the class? You want to not do it? Okay. Welcome, kids.
Thank you. Through the General Assembly members, my name is Vanessa. These are my friends Tabitha and Seth. We are students in Ms. Strike's fifth grade class at Rogers Park Elementary. Our class is trying to help solve the community problem. Let us present our research and suggestions to you. We will close with an action plan that we will give the Anchorage Assembly to consider. We've been studying panhandling. We've learned that it is illegal, but panhandlers still do it. They stand on the side of the road asking for money. Once we decided as a class to learn about panhandling, our teacher contacted Jim Crockett, the president of Beans Cafe, and asked him to come speak to us. He did so on several occasions. We learned that panhandlers spend a lot of the money they receive on alcohol, drugs, and cigarettes, things that are bad for their health. A policeman came to our classroom and explained that if panhandlers have had too much to drink or have abused drugs, they can become violent and could possibly hurt other people. After these visits to our class, we volunteered for a morning at Beans Cafe. We learned that charities like this can really help the homeless, more than money given directly to panhandlers.
This is a problem. One of the reasons why panhandling is illegal and has been illegal since 2004. It is illegal for people to stand on the side of the road asking for money and for drivers to give them money through their open windows. Giving panhandlers money is hazardous for traffic and can be deadly. Panhandlers have died running into traffic, and accidents have occurred when drivers swerve to avoid them. When drivers give panhandlers money, they are helping them break the law as well. Also, the drivers themselves are breaking the law. Officers don't normally arrest people who are panhandling, so over the years, people have forgotten about this law. There are two different types of panhandling, one of which is not illegal. An example would be playing a guitar on the sidewalk with an open case at your feet indicating you want donations. This is not considered illegal because there is no sign or verbal speech showing that you want money. On the other hand, standing on the side of the road asking for money is illegal. That is what we're trying to stop. Members of our class have written a letter to the editor of the Anchorage Daily News about this subject. Many people have written in and said that we were labeling the homeless as bad people who don't deserve a good life. That is not the message we're trying to send. We really want to help the panhandlers in a more productive way. After our research, our class has come up with these ideas on how to stop panhandling. Number 1, use police trainees to monitor day-to-day panhandling. This would help because it would be good training for the police and would minimize panhandling. Number 2, put signs on people mover buses, overpasses, businesses, and neighborhoods that advertise that panhandling is illegal and that encourage people to make charity donations to places that will help the homeless, like Beans Cafe and the Brother Francis Shelter. Unfortunately, we were told by some people at the People Mover that putting signs like this on the buses would be too controversial. Number 3, post letters in the Korean newspaper, the Alaska Star, and the Daily News asking the same thing.
In conclusion, we are asking the Anchorage community to stop giving panhandlers money and help even more by donating or volunteering at charities to help panhandlers get back on their feet. We are asking the Assembly to use funds to help get this message out. Specifically, we would like the Assembly to direct People Mover to allow for advertisements on their bus. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, kids. Now we have a few questions for you, if you don't mind. Mr. Flynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually read your letter to the editor. I think it was last week, maybe the week before. Very well written, very nicely done. Thank you. Did you have the opportunity to engage the United Way in your project?
Yes, we did.
You did, okay. Because they're, of course, work closely with organizations like the Brother Francis Shelter and Beans Cafe and other organizations that help people pull themselves out of poverty and provide opportunity. I think you'd find them to be a good avenue for your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank all three of you and the rest of your class and your teacher for being here this evening. Your presentation was very, very well done, and I love your suggestions. And Mr. Trainey and I represent the district where your school is, and as a matter of fact, we're at your school every single month at a community council meeting in the library, and the art is just phenomenal. It's very, very nice. I think your suggestions are really, really great, and I'd like to ask the administration tonight, why is it controversial to put signs on People Mover bus, because I really don't know. And secondly, you talked about encouraging folks in the community not to give money, and I know that an organization called the Downtown Partnership was putting forward a marketing effort, as they did a few years ago, to educate folks on what they should do with money besides giving it to panhandlers. And I don't know where that's at right now, but I'll definitely look into it. And thank you again for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Ms. Drummond has a question, ma'am.
Yes, thank you so much for coming. I, too, have a special place in my heart for Rogers Park, as my son went to second grade to sixth grade in your school. So I spent a lot of time in that building, but it's been many, many years. I'm a graphic designer, and I frequently design bus signs. So I'm here to volunteer my services as a designer to help you design the bus signs. I don't know who told you that it would be controversial, but I see bus signs all the time that are sponsored by the city on issues that are municipal issues, and informing people of what the law is certainly a municipal issue. Frequently, the buses drive around with no signs on them because they don't happen to have an advertiser paying for that particular advertising slot, and I do believe that signs that the city wants to run can be plugged in when there isn't paid advertising to take their place. So I don't see what could be possibly controversial about it. After all, look at all those political signs that are out there driving around our town right now, many of which I have designed in the past. So I'll be happy to work with you, and I appreciate Ms. Gray Jackson's suggestion to talk to the United Way. I'm sure that you will get cooperation from the People Mover on plugging those signs in to inform people about what the law is. Have you seen those large wooden coins that I think it's ARBRA, or one of the organizations that works with the homeless, hands out to people and tells you to give them those coins, which gets them a meal at Beans Cafe?
Yeah, one of the groups at our school came up with that idea because Jim Crockett was kind of telling us about that, and they were wondering if they could do it, but then they decided that had too much money involved, and so they came up with a different idea.
Okay, I'll bet you that Ed O'Neill of ARBRA would be happy to come and speak to your class about those coins, because that's where I got mine, and I have long since given them away. I think it's time to get some more. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Area. Paul?
Yes, okay, now I got names earlier. Vanessa, Tabitha, and then who's the other young man there?
Seth.
Seth. Awesome. I just wrote down his name. Well, I think you did a fantastic presentation. You kept it under the time limit. We could hear you. That was really good. And I want to thank you because, you know, there were some folks here from the League of Women Voters earlier talking about getting people to participate and talk to government. And this is, you know, it starts early, and I think it's great that you're out here. And you're in the 5th grade?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, well, a couple things just as a commentary to follow up. I think the program Mr. Ray Jackson was talking about is called Change for the Better. Have you heard that? It's talk about putting your coins from your pocket or your car pocket or your glove, your ashtray. Most people don't use it anymore anyways. They don't smoke. But they put it in like a meter so that the money can go to buy meals rather than giving money directly to the people on the side of the street. And then the other thing is and just to make sure we're clear, because years ago we did have an ordinance that said it was illegal to even ask or panhandle and ask for money, but there was a court case, I think out of Chicago, that said that they could ask under the freedom of speech. They could ask for help, much like you're talking about with a guitar case. It's the act of stepping into the street or reaching in, or people from their car handing money out that's the illegal act. So we'll make sure our signs look real accurate so we can get that info out to people. I think that's great. I think you guys took on a good cause and a good plan. You got some good action plans. I just commend you. Is your teacher here?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your
Mr. Gutierrez, sir?
Are you sure you guys are just in the 5th grade? I don't believe you. That, honestly, one of the best presentations that I've seen in a while. You really had everything organized. You had all your facts and figures laid out. You did a great job of presenting them. It's sometimes kind of scary getting up there and talking to isn't it? But you guys did great. You really did. And I want to commend you. You had some good ideas. I think what you discovered is that when you go out and try to solve a problem, not everybody's going to agree with you. But that doesn't mean you don't have a terrific idea. Just don't ever let that hold you back. If somebody has a different opinion, it doesn't make them right, doesn't make them wrong, it just means they have an opinion. And it doesn't make your ideas any less than they are. This is one of the biggest problems that we face in this city, and you guys tore into it and really did a lot of hard work, and it's very impressive, and you should be very proud of yourselves. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Osiander, ma'am.
I'm going to join with everybody else saying good job, well done. And I will commit to you that I'm going to pursue the sign issue on the buses.
Now I'm going to turn the time over to the man that wrote the panhandling ordinance, the mayor. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great presentation. You know, the mayor gets special powers. He gets to give grades to 5th graders. And so you all get an A+. And I believe one of our presenters is the daughter of our municipal attorney. Tabitha, is that your dad over here? I see a future municipal attorney in the works here. This is great. Well, we'll certainly check on the bus advertising. You know, if there's a way that we can do that, we certainly will promote that. And your presentation was very timely because we're actually working on a public service announcement as we're getting into the winter season to remind people that the best way to use their money is not to give money to panhandlers, but to support those agencies like you mentioned, Salvation Army, Beans Cafe, so that they can help those people. And that's a much better strategy, I think. So good thinking. And thanks again.
Thank you.
Paul, coming back for a second bite.
Mr. Mayor, I might recommend if we do the public service announcements, perhaps these young three or perhaps their grade members might be involved in a TV or a radio commercial.
That's a
Might
great
get their
idea.
attention.
Yep. I'm not sure we can afford them, but that's
Well, kids, thank you for
With those
being here.
special
You did
grades.
an excellent job, okay? I've sat through a lot of these. You guys did a wonderful job. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Before we take our dinner break, the next item is item 11A. This is under old business unfinished action, a memorandum AM 512-2010 Anchorage Community Development Authority Board of Directors. Appointment Larry Baker.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion from assembly members? If not, ask unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, that item is approved. Do we need Mr. Baker to come up and identify himself for us? We're now taking our dinner break. When we come back, we'll deal with the rest of the agenda. Is Mr. Birch on the line? We've got 6 in chambers. 7. I'll need 8 up here so we can consider this item. Amanda, could you go ask them, please? Where's Debbie? Where's Debbie? Where's Harry? Debbie, you're holding out remarkably well, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Well, Mike, you let us know you're going to catch it first.
Oh, I'm here between Mr. Honeman and Ms. Osiander, and they're both sick. Oh, yeah, I'm getting it.
Okay, next item of business up in front of us is item 11B under notes of reconsideration. Ordinance CO 2010-64, an ordinance amending English Municipal Code, Section 3.20.010 and 3.20.070 to restructure planning, development services, and community planning development within the executive branch. It was approved on 9/28/2010. Summary of economic effects was amended and approved. Notice of reconsideration was given by Mr. Honeman. Mr. Honeman, sir, your motion?
The motion to reconsider.
Yes, sir.
Yes. I move that we reconsider the vote from.
Second.
Now, is there a second
Second.
to discuss that, Mr. Honeman?
Yes. Basically, at the request at the last assembly meeting, if you recall, is to study a little bit about we didn't have the proposed budget. We didn't know what the budget was going to look like, and we had several comments coming in from both the public and Public Works or previous titled organizations. And the concern here is that for the money, where are we making the savings at? Are we losing at the top level, or are we losing at the lower level who actually deliver the services to the public? And the research that has so far, and since the budget came out, kind of bolsters that. And the specifics are a little tough to get to because of the way the budget, again, the reorganization, the elimination of some departments and combining of another. But it does show that we're keeping 2 executives that were previously at range 22 execs, and now both of those are being upgraded to range 23, which is a pay increase. We're also creating, essentially the departments are going to be at deputy director levels. They were previously range 17 non-reps, are now increasing to range 18, and establishing 2 administrative management positions at, again, range 18 non-rep, which is, fairly high pay range within a municipality classification. The concern, it is essentially in deference to what the community dialogues were that said their concern of the community, and I share the same concern, is if we're going to make cuts and layoffs in this budget coming up in 2011, as proposed by the administration, it's totally in deference to what we're reading, where those cuts should come from, and the community is basically saying we could lose by first and second choice, we could lose in the administration and support, and that was the purpose for the reconsider.
Thank you. The question in front of us is, shall we reconsider? Ms. Osiander, ma'am, on the question of reconsideration.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Basically, I didn't hear anything new in Mr. Honeman's comments, and so I'm not going to be supporting reconsideration.
Thank you. Any other comments from assembly members? If so, please cue in. If not, I'll bring it up for a vote. Mr. Flynn, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one brief note. In terms of the amendments we made to the summary of economic effects, I'm not sure they were entirely accurate, and the reason is thus. The savings that we're achieving in 2010, which we added to the C at our last meeting, are achieved by the fact that we have vacant positions that we're not going to fill, and we weren't going to fill them anyway. So, I guess it's maybe technically correct to have it in there, but I don't see that that passage or not passage of this item makes a difference one way or the other in terms of cost savings at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Gray Jackson on the issue of shall we reconsider.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We received, all of us, I believe, or several of us, some anonymous comments on the reorganization, and I stand by the fact that I really support this reorganization, but I also have not had time to look in depth at a couple of emails that at least I received, and there were some other names on it. And I really want to talk about it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to reconsider the ordinance to talk about it, but I just want to put folks on notice, if we do move on with this, I'm going to have some questions after the fact. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Johnston on the question of reconsideration.
I have not heard anything new as far as bringing this up for reconsideration. I'd like to say that all along, this reorganization was about two things. One is about the savings in costs, but also was streamlining the whole process. And really in this, am I echoing?
No, I think Chris is out there too.
Really, this is about two positions and how the organization diagram comes from the municipal manager's office and who reports to whom. And what's underneath is more of how a process is working and how somebody from the public will be able to go to permitting and do all that they need to with permitting and planning and zoning, and somebody else will be able to go to the PM&E or go, I mean, in other words, it's streamlining, and I'm still in support of it. Always will be in support of it, and I think we should give it a try.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other comments from Assembly members? If not, Madam Clerk, please conduct the roll call vote on the question of shall we reconsider. Yes, we'll reconsider. No, we'll not.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Starr?
No.
Mr. Hall?
No.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Ms. Osiander? Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
Mr. Birch? No. Mr. Birch was a no on telephone. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Johnston? No. Mr. Trainee?
No. For 6 noes against reconsideration, 5 yeses, that item will not be reconsidered by the body. Moving on to the agenda, we're now on item 14A, Ordinance AO 2010-71, an ordinance approving the conveyance of conservation easements on the Campbell Creek Estuary property for the benefit of the state of Alaska and the Great Land Trust. There's a same memorandum that goes with it, AM 527-2010. On the rest of these items under 14, anybody that wants to testify, please come forward, state your last name clearly for the clerk, and we request you spell your last name because we have to transcribe these. So the public hearing is now open. Anybody wishing to testify on item 14A, AO 2010-70 plan, please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just...
Yes, Mr. Flynn.
For the edification of folks who wish to speak on this matter, it is the intent of the Assembly to continue this matter to our meeting on the 26th. You may speak either tonight or on the 26th, but not both.
So, if somebody would like to come forward and testify, come on. We've got time for you. You've got 3 minutes, and the beeper will go up. Anyone at all? Hi, Phil.
My name is Phil Shepard, S-H-E-P-H-A-R-D. I'm the Executive Director of Great Land Trust. I'm also a graduate of Rogers Park Elementary, and I hope I can do as well as the fifth graders that are here. It is my privilege to be here in front of this body, and I'd like to thank the Assembly and the administration for considering this project. I think it's a very important project, meets a lot of the goals that are listed in the 2020 plan, the watershed plan, the coastal management plan, and it will provide for a parcel of land that will benefit the public here in Anchorage, and we've worked really hard with the administration through the support of many partners to come up with a package that we think addresses the obvious concern, budgetary and risk concerns that any landowner would have if accepting a property like this. So we appreciate the due diligence the municipality is doing, and we look forward to continuing to work to complete the deal. We're still working on that. It's a complex project. There's 2 conservation easements that have to be worked out. We're most of the way through that, and we've very much appreciated the cooperation of members of this body and the administration in doing that process.
Thank you, Phil. Ms. Osiander, ma'am.
You confirmed what I was just asking Mr. Vacalis about, because we got an email from the municipal attorney with some additional information on conservation easement. And I believe Mr. Vacalis is going to suggest that this be continued till next week. And so I just wanted that to be announced in case anybody was here. They might want to speak after they see the final.
Ma'am, Mr. Flynn did that earlier.
You made that motion?
He did.
I apologize, Mr. Flynn.
It's all right, ma'am.
You've been ill, ma'am. I understand.
It's all right, Debbie. Do you have any comments, Debbie,
No, I
relative
just
to
better
Phil?
sit down and listen.
It's a long way to go wherever. You told us that before. Mr. Honeman?
Yes, as I was reading through, and for comment purposes, the anticipated closing, what's the anticipated closing on this property should everything go through, do you know?
November 30th of this year.
So then, if I'm reading right through the agreement, it's would be essentially 1 year from November 30th, the additional monies would be either committed to or placed in some escrow or something, some account?
Yeah, there's 2 periods. Within 1 year, we'll be cleaning up the property and providing a portion of the funds, and then we have 5 years to complete our entire funding commitment to the property, which totals $1 million. Yeah, because it will take several years to fundraise, to do the infrastructure, parking, trailhead, trails. That'll take several years.
I took great pleasure in going through and doing the tour with you. Some fellow citizens with your lead, and I appreciate the fact that you've taken some educational training and schooling, other positions out of state, and come back home, so to speak, to help us to oversee some of our most, I think, valuable resources here, the invaluable resources we'll never be able to replace. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any other questions from Assembly members? Not seeing any. Thank you, Phil.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify on this issue, please come forward, state your name clearly for the record. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one. Move to continue the public hearing to the meeting of the 26th. If somebody will make the motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved and seconded. Is there any objection to continuing this to the 26th? Seeing none.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm just curious, why are we postponing it?
We don't have the legal agreement in place at this point.
Okay,
I
thank
think
you.
the administration, Mr. Wheeler, you can go ahead if you want, but I think it's because all the documents have not been formalized yet relative to the conveyance of this property before it comes in front of us.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
And I would much rather have a completed document than a document we don't see and wonder what's in it, ma'am.
Understood.
So seeing no objection, that item will come back in front of us again the 26th. We're now down to item 14B, Ordinance AO 2010-65, an ordinance amending provisionally adopted new Title 21, Section 21.07.30B, large non-residential establishments and surrounded by large lot residential districts, amending Anchorage Municipal Code Title 21 subject to concurrent final passage and approval of all previously adopted chapters of Title 21. For the Planning Department, there's a semi-memorandum with it, 2005-2010. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward, state your name clearly for the record. Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Ms. Osiander?
This is based on a request that came to the Planning Department during consideration of some of the provisionally adopted chapters. Specifically, it came from a group of people on the hillside, and frankly, I expected to see them here tonight, considering how strongly they were advocating for this provision. Basically, the concern was, what if you have a large non-residential use abutting and surrounded by fairly large lot rural residential? They were specifically, this I think started initially because of concerns of a church down there that was going to go forth and try to put on an adjoining building for a church school. But the discussion went a little further than that, And there was a strong request from those folks that there be consideration for them to maintain their residential rural lifestyle. So basically, when the committee looked at both planning staff recommendations and heard from the residents at several meetings, that's why I say I really expected they'd be here. The primary, excuse me, maybe that's it. The primary concern that we heard was, give us some room here. And so if you look at the document, specifically, it's the very last 2 pages are the change. We talked about increased setbacks, particularly for large buildings. We talk about requiring L3 buffering. We talked about making sure that parking lots were set back away from the lot lines. And we talked about breaking up large wall expanses of buildings to be sure that visually you wouldn't have much of an impact on the home. Now, we changed it in committee. We worked a lot on this. We basically changed things 4 or 5 different times. But it ended up with a unanimous support of the committee, and I'd recommend that the Assembly approve it.
As a member of the Hillside community in Title 21, I just want to echo what Mrs. Osiander said. We did put a lot of effort into this, and I think we came out with a good document. Thank you.
Well, just perhaps to Ms. Osiander, do we still have the zoning class that's talking about developmental reserve?
Yes, and matter of fact, I think we're going to be talking more about that, particularly since now the planning staff is talking about putting transition zones back in place.
So when a developer takes their property out of developmental reserve, would this actually encourage them to hurry up and do that, or what do you sense on that? Because it seems like a more restrictive use of the large lots, and I wondered if you would see an encouragement there.
Well, that wasn't an impact that we discussed. Maybe Ms. McConnell has some feelings on that. My sense is no. The main impact of this is going to be for public facilities like churches and maybe large instructional facilities that have property on the hillside or in certain parts of Chugach Eagle River. They'll still be able to build, but there's additional buffering and setback requirements that this overlays on them.
Yeah, I just, don't want to have an impediment to the large lot developments either, though, if we do see developmental reserve, because they can come out and move into a different class of a larger lot configuration as well, as opposed to just high-dense housing. So I appreciate the hard work, and obviously you can't consider everything, but if we have to tweak it to make sure our large lot or our large landholders, I think particularly of Eklutna, to encourage them to continue large lot development where appropriate. So thank you for your work.
Ms. Osiander. Ms. Osiander? Oh, that wasn't your mic.
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Lest I offend the Title 21 committee, yes.
Mr. Trainee? Ms. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Birch?
Yes.
Ms. Drummond? Yes. It's unanimous.
That was approved unanimously by the body. The next item in front of us is item 14C. Resolution Error 2010-285, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving alcoholic beverages conditional use for package store use and license number 5002 in the B3 General Business District for TCH Inc., doing business as Wine House at Huffman, located at 1330 Huffman Road, Suite H, on the Thomas W. Spurson, number 1 subdivision, Block 2, Lot 5A, generally located at the south side of Huffman Road between the old and new Seward Highway. and this pertains to New and Old Seward Ocean View Community Council area, case number 21-113. Planning Department, there's a semi-memorandum with it, AM 529-2010. Public hearing is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record, please. You have 3 minutes. Anyone at all? I guess there was a rush and you won, huh?
It's been a long time since I've been here. My name is Joan Diamond, D-I-A-M-O-N-D. And I'm here representing myself.
Thank you, Joan. Go ahead.
I'm here to ask you to deny the conditional use permit for the Wine House on Huffman. This is not to be a rubber stamp for the Assembly to approve a state liquor license, but rather a separate decision that you have incredible authority over to decide where someone will buy and sell alcohol in a neighborhood. And the impact is significant. It's not like selling insurance or sandwiches. The neighborhood is affected and should be consulted. This specific area is small, family-friendly, where people walk and bike, although heavily trafficked, very heavily trafficked. In addition, we have had an increase in liquor licenses, package stores in particular, in this area, probably over the last 10 years. As the population moves south, so do the liquor licenses. Within this one area, and I did bring a map if this is helpful, just within that small commercial area we have on Huffman, there would be 3 licenses, 3 package stores in a row within less than 500 feet. Well, when I worked for the municipality for the Department of Health and Social Services, I studied and reported on the association between concentration of liquor licenses or liquor stores and associated crime, violence, DUIs. In fact, Mark Mew and George Vacalis and Diane, there's a number of, maybe even Mr. Trainee, when I did a work session for the Assembly, gave this information so that people could see the associated importance between where people locate, the concentration of licenses over a small area, and that connection to the crime that we have in town. I'm here because I want to prevent this from happening to this area. We wait and manage by crisis. And at a time when we're looking at the budget and services being cut, something like land use ordinances and conditional use permits can protect a neighborhood. Now, this is not about the owner, Mr. Talbot, and whether he's a good businessman or whether he has good business practices, because he has a good track record. He owns another liquor license on the package store on Diamond and I believe in Jewel Lake. However, it is a public safety issue. It's not about him and his ability to have a business. At the same time, we have a new license that's being introduced to the city. For all of you that have lived here for any period of time, we have had only a certain number of package store licenses based on population. But our population's increased, and the state has issued a new license. This is the first time in maybe 30 years, and I've been here 40 years, that a new license was issued. He didn't buy it from someone else who owned a license. So he paid $1,600 instead of $75,000. It's a big difference because he has less to lose and much more for us to pay by this happening to our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. We have some questions. Paul?
Yes. Hi, Ms. Diamond. Thank you for testifying, and I have been reading with some interest on some of the comments and such. And I noted, and we've got a map, I'm not sure if you've got one, maybe it's based on what you just...
It's what I made of the specific area.
Map there. And I noted with interest, and you did mention, this, if approved, would be the third package store for purchasing a bottle or a can or something and take away, not necessarily to be consumed on the premise. And as I look farther up north, I noticed that there are only 2 others, Value Liquor, it looks like, and Wine Styles, which is a specialty wine store.
And then Holiday Gas at O'Malley.
Okay, I must have missed that on here. It's farther up north from, it's off my map. And, you know the area of town that I live and represent, and particularly in the area northeast in Muldoon, they had the new mall came in, and then there's some other, there's a new restaurant going in, and so we're certainly a pretty concentrated part of town and certainly have our share of licensees and people who are similarly concerned about both making a business viable and working, and at the same time, working with the community's concerns to make sure that it's a viable thing. I mean, let's face it, the money's going to talk whether or not this business is going to be successful, I guess, if he's a good operator, as you've already admitted he is. Are there any concerns that you would have that's not already there, if you will, with having these other liquor stores or restaurants? Are there any more concerns having this particular store added above and beyond what you've already seen or concerned with? I mean, you
Probably the most important is for all of us that have lived here for any period of time, once a liquor store is approved, the location which you have the power over, it never goes away. It will never be anything else because of the difficulty finding a location. Most people won't buy a liquor license until they have a location because most of our neighborhoods now have moratoriums on any additional package stores going in. Yours, Spenard, Mountain View. So that is one issue, is coming south is one place they can find a location perhaps, but it was once a Baskin-Robbins. Once it's approved, it will never be anything but a liquor store. Now remember, in this town, 80% of our liquor is sold out of package stores. 80%. So people buy it, take it, and drink it at home and in other people's houses. We are the last outpost before you hit the flats to Girdwood. So they buy it, and they leave, and they take off. And we also have that added concern. So those are probably the biggest. You have Oak and Keg, and then you have Tesoro, and you would have the Wine House, all three of them within 500 feet. Once you have that kind of concentration, there's a tendency to lower the price, and as soon as we lower the price, we have an increase in drinking. An increase in availability gives you an increase in consumption. I mean, I spent 28 years in this city working for Department of Health to tell you this, and I've said it many times. It's just been years since I've said it to you.
Thank you. Paul, anything else? Thank you. Harriet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming, Ms. Diamond. I appreciate your input. Can you describe what the wine style store is? I'm not familiar at all with this, with these particular.
Primarily selling wines.
I'm sorry?
Primarily selling wines.
Just wine, pretty much?
You know, whether they've added more to it, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes it has to be more in order to compete.
Mm-hmm. I'm just curious as to why the restaurants were included on this map.
Restaurants, remember, it's a different license, too.
If I could, I'm asking the question.
Okay.
If the restaurants are for consumption on premises, and I've been to several of these places, are the consumption on premises places causing a problem in this area?
No, not that I know of.
Okay. This is really difficult for me. Coming from Spenard, dealing with liquor stores, and no, they don't always last. As you will recall, we got 35 people out to testify against a really bad independent operator who was consequently shut down. And that place is now a church. And every time I drive by it, I remember the night in this when people lined up to the back of the room in this place, and I was one of them in the late 90s.
But how long did it take, and how much happened before it finally got shut down?
I think it was about 3 years worth of grief. Part of the problem here, I think, comes from the unwillingness of folks on the hillside to have commercial retail operations east of the Seward Highway. That's why it's being concentrated here. There is no other place to go. I mean, there are 3 roundabouts. One is already in place. It's not even on this map because it's opened so recently. The traffic is a real issue in this neighborhood to begin with. And that particular mall, one of Taproot left and came to my neighborhood, and I love it that they came there. But now I understand why they left. It's because there was no parking there. That's a really serious issue. And what was the other? Where is the other the store at the north end of this? Where is Holiday Gas?
O'Malley and the Old Seward.
On which? Do you know which corner that is?
Northwest.
Okay, this aerial must be old because there isn't anything there. There's some green stuff in that corner. Okay, setback. Okay. Now,
Anything
to relate
else,
back to the history, I used to have in my head the number of liquor stores that the ABC board thinks are appropriate for Anchorage. Do you have those numbers by any chance?
I actually do. I was there today. You want to know package stores? Do we have a? Remember, the regulation for state licenses was really established in the early 80s. We never had any regulation for how many liquor stores or bars we could have statewide. It was kind of a free-for-all for anybody that was here then. In the early 80s, Pat Purcell established a statute that then established our ratio for full dispensary licenses, which are your full bars, and that's 1 per 3,000 people. It also goes with liquor stores, package store licenses, and club licenses. Restaurants that have only beer and wine are different. They're 1 per 1,500. Now, using those ratios and our population, which has grown some, we now have, for example, for Anchorage, we're authorized to have, let me look at this, 90 full beverage dispensary, full bars. We're authorized to have 90. We have 155. I mean, we'll never get big enough to fill up our state statute. So we have way too many bar licenses out in Anchorage. But for package stores, we're allowed 90, and we have 85. And that occurred because we had an increase in population that absorbed some of those licenses and made more available. So that's how Mr. Chang was able to buy one so cheap. He walked into the ABC office not knowing. They had reissued a few more licenses and was able to buy it for $1,600 instead of what I would have if I'd gone to, say, Tesoro and they were selling theirs. The market value is somewhere between, I don't know, $55,000 and $75,000. But the deal in this town is to get a location. Nobody wants you because they're trying to protect their neighborhoods now. So that's why it's where you sit and what you decide is not about comparing neighborhoods, because one neighborhood, unfortunately, got oversaturated, and they did. Doesn't mean another neighborhood shouldn't be able to keep it from happening to them. Now, we're almost more saturated than Spenard now, in terms of area. And
Harry, I've got
did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you. Those are the numbers I was looking for.
Thank you. Mr. Flynn, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Diamond. Nice to see you this evening. Some of the communications we received expressed concern about what side of Huffman Road this store was planned for. The folks who wrote to us suggested if it were on the north side of the street, and that it would be more appropriate because it would be further away from the higher density housing on the south side of the street. Do you have an opinion one way or the other on that?
North side of Huffman, you're saying?
Correct. If it were in one of those commercial.
It would be less. It would be easier on the population of the neighborhood because of the small commercial area we have on Huffman. It's from the old and new Seward is just this, for anybody that knows, it's this little tiny street.
I'm familiar with it.
So yes, moving north would help just by moving that density of operation out.
Thank you very much, Mr. Diamond.
Chris, do you have a question?
Following this, and we have heard from the community councils, and their concern is aptly represented in the testimony. But no, I do not have a question at this point.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Joan. There are no other questions.
Thank you.
Members. Anybody else wish to testify on this issue, please come forward. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. My name is Dan Burgess. That's spelled B-U-R-G-E-S-S. I am here two roles. One is the Sand Lake Community Council president. Mr. Chang has two package stores in our district, the Diamond Liquor and Wine Store on Jewel Lake. And since he has taken over ownership of Diamond Liquor, the Sand Lake Community Council has received 0 complaints about his business and no complaints whatsoever about his wine store. And personally, as a customer, his stores are clean, polite, always card, a responsible approach compared to many other liquor stores. I will go to him always because I've had poor service, not being carded, seen other people not carded at other stores, and he does not do that. He cards everybody appropriately, and I believe he is a responsible business owner and would do a good job of upholding the law and supporting the community out there as he does Sand Lake. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Question from Assembly members? There don't appear to be any. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anybody else wishing to testify, please come forward. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. My name is Talbot Chang. Last name is spelled C-H-A-N-G. I am the applicant for the proposed package store, the wine house at Huffman. I have been in the industry for 9 years, and I have a good track record of being a responsible retailer for alcoholic beverage. And I believe I am a responsible retailer. And to be a responsible retailer, I take the community's concern very seriously, and I am willing to take following steps to address their concerns. Number 1, a 24-hour video monitoring of the parking lot, alley, and the premise. Number 2, routine checkups of the parking lot and the alley will be conducted by the staff to ward off any underages, loitering, inebriates, and the like. I also believe in supporting the Cops and Shops program in this matter. Number 3, mandatory ID checking of all ages. Number 4, implementing civil penalty process to the underages who break the law. Number 5, attending at the community council meetings to continue to address the needs of the neighborhood. I take these steps because I believe I am community-minded. And I am a contributing citizen of Anchorage. I volunteer for community efforts. I believe in investing back to the community. In details, I am an active member of Sand Lake Community Council and serve as FCC delegate. And I'll be involved with the Neighborhood of USA Convention next year. I participate in community cleanups. I make contributions to the local functions, and I haven't turned away any local nonprofit organizations that came to my way. I am an active member of ARBRA. I have been helping Ed O'Neill in his efforts to clean up the local homeless camps. I am a member of CHAR, and recently I have been invited to join the board of Anchorage CHAR. In conclusion, with your approval, I plan on opening up a clean, respectable, neat boutique shop that tailors to the mid to upper end clients. With the wine house, I wish to further enhance and liven up the South Anchorage, not to blight on it. I pledge this, and I ask for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Ms. Johnston?
Yes. Have you met with the Ocean View Community Council?
I'm sorry, yes, I have.
And did you provide them with this list? I know that Bernadette Bradley, who's the chair, is away this week, but did you discuss this list, these?
At the time, I wasn't prepared, but I did explain that I would be responsible. I explained that I don't do business with inebriates and homeless and panhandlers and the like. I despise doing business with that crowd.
Do you currently have a lease in this location?
It's pending, but I had to commit for a non-refundable security deposit.
Okay, so you haven't started any work on this retail space. You're waiting to see as far as the liquor license and.
No.
Okay. You're aware that the community council in the past has had issues as far as liquor stores being on this side of the street because of its close proximity. It butts right up against high impact residential, high density, residential.
I have considered that, yes, ma'am. And I do believe if you look around the town, there are many retail package stores that borders next to the neighborhoods. I live in one of the neighborhoods.
Did Ms. Bradley discuss with you the fact that, MAPCO and now it's Holiday and Walgreens had both discussed having package stores, and when the community council said they didn't support any package stores on that side of the street, they withdrew their request for package stores? Did she mention that to you?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Mr. Chang, thank you for coming tonight. And one of the questions I had asked already, prepared to ask you, you've already addressed it, that you're a member of Arbara, where Arbara with cleanup of the camps, I guess, for lack of better terms, and some community cleanup as well.
Yes, sir.
And I'm glad to hear that you've got some plans in place for the mandatory ID, and you say of all ages. And so you're willing to commit to that, even if it were put perhaps even as a condition of your license? Would you be willing to do that?
I would.
Okay. And the reason I ask is because we have other issues that are state statutory obligations on the red stripe license, red stripe bar on a license for people who've been convicted of DUI and refusals to submit to a breath test. And right now there's very little efforts being taken industry-wide, so we'd look forward to further, not just the package stores, but also the bars and restaurants, and also checking that. So you'd be willing to put that in a condition to operate in that location? Okay. And I understand you've been in operation in Anchorage with two other locations, is that right, for 9 years?
9 years in Diamond Liquor on West Diamond,
okay,
and 1 year at the Jewel Lake Wine Store.
Okay. And this package store here, would it just be wines, or would it be wine and beer and the full gamut of alcohol?
I'll be concentrating on wine mainly, but I do plan on selling fine spirits and fine beers.
Okay. So this would be higher-end stuff, not necessarily the cheap wines or the cheap beers, things like that?
I'm going to restrain myself from singles of cheap but there's a lot of gourmet single beers out there.
Okay.
And cost is higher cost.
I see.
And mid-range of beer, I'm into generics of Budweiser's and Coors and Miller.
But you're not interested in, you're not going to be selling the little shot size or the small or the cheap wines?
I would leave that up to this body for the recommendation on that. I believe the package stores on that road does sell the same product.
Okay. Nothing.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chang, thank you for coming out tonight. I want to ask you a few more questions on the point of the mandatory ID. I'm sure you're aware of the debates that we had on that issue last year and last summer. Mr. Holman mentioned if you would support making this part of your conditional use. I'm not going to propose that. You're not in my community. I think that would be up to the assembly members that represent that area. But if it were not a part of your conditional use, if it were merely a voluntary gesture on your part, what we saw was several operators last year voluntarily commit to carding everyone regardless of their age, but that sort of spirit of voluntarism fell off after a while and several dropped out. Are you telling us that even if it's voluntary, that this is something you're going to do for as long as you operate at that location?
Yes, I would.
All right. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, sir.
Those are all the questions. Thank you, sir. Oh, excuse me. Ms. Gray Jackson has a question. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one question. You have two other stores, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you ask for ID right now?
I'm sorry?
Do you ask for ID right now?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, Harriet?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Everyone
them.
else is done. Thank you for coming, Mr. Chang. Your other stores, do you do the same kind of patrolling outside the stores that you propose to do for this location?
It's not as busy locations, and also I'm specifically talking about the West Diamond liquor store, and we could pretty much see if there was a person out there and be aware of it, unless they were in the blind spots. So we're quite aware of if there was a patron or a passerby through the window.
How many employees do you have in the store during the day, daylight hours?
During the daylight hours, it's quite slow pace, so just one person.
Just one. It's difficult. My son recently finished working for a year and a half at the independent liquor store on Gamble Street, and he was the only employee on during the day, and it's really difficult to do any sort of, it's really difficult to be anywhere but at the cash register and watching the front door when there's only a single employee in the store. So I have some concerns about how you would provide patrolling and otherwise when there's only one employee in the store.
Yes. As I see it to this point, both my stores, the business level is not that, how should I say, often during the daytime.
Mm-hmm.
There's awful lengthy pauses, and sometimes they come in spurts. And at this point of stage, I feel that there's enough in-between time. I mean, there's, during the daytime, you can spend an hour and not see unfortunately, not see a customer.
And in the evening, is there still just a single employee?
Yes, at the Diamond. But
I'm sorry, what intersection is the Diamond store close to? I'm not familiar with where that's located.
It would be, closest intersection would be, well, the overpass of Minnesota and Victor Road.
Okay.
That would be the other intersection.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. There are no other questions. Thank you. Anybody else wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name, Cody, for the record, please. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing none. Public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make an amendment to this, but I'd move to approve. But I don't know how the proper will amend this ordinance itself.
Okay, is there a
move to
second
approve?
to approve?
I'll second it.
Okay. Motion is second. Jennifer? Since it's your area, ma'am.
Yes. Both Mr. Birch and I spent quite a bit of time with the Ocean View Community Council on this. And as I sort of mentioned to Mr. Chang, there's a history as far as this actually this whole side of the road. And the Ocean View Community Council was not so much against having an increase in number of package stores, but where it was located. And they have blocked liquor stores on this side of the road for, I think it was the last 15 years, because it is such high density, residential high density in the back of it. Also, when we met at the strip mall, and there's a number of sort of family-friendly type outlets that are in this strip mall, and so it kind of left it. And where this package store was going to be is a Baskin-Robbins ice cream, was a Baskin-Robbins ice cream. And as Ms. Drummond brought up, you begin to see how easily some very astute young people could probably sneak in and out of a store during the day and maybe do things that you wouldn't want them doing as teenagers. For that reason, I will not be supporting this. I do look, reason I was asking as far as this, his lease, I know that there's also space available, and I asked the Ocean View Community Council on this. I asked them many times pointedly, would you approve Mr. Chang being on the other side of the road? And they said yes. And I know that there's space available next to Southside Bistro, and if it was an upscale packaging store, I would think the co-location might be a very good opportunity for Mr. Chang. But having it in this strip mall, it really doesn't seem conducive to the retail outlets. And I'm going to go I'm going to show my respect to the Community Council and be voting no on this.
Chris, before I go to the next person, do you have any comments, sir?
Yes, I would echo Jennifer's comments. We did spend a considerable amount of time with the surrounding communities as a long-standing concern and objection to licensees on the south side of Huffman in that area, and as testified earlier and commented earlier, both the gas station and the new drugstore going in there were declined to pursue a liquor license just because of the close proximity to the surrounding neighborhood. So I also will be a no vote, certainly no reflection on the good work, accomplishments, and capabilities of Mr. Chang. He's just appears to run a exemplary operation, and I think if you can figure out a location maybe on the north side of the road there, that would be fine. But thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Honeman?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's rare that I typically would listen to the public here on this, and I do know that there's a very vocal community council in my representative district, and they're typically opposed to any alcohol establishment, period, bar or package store, and oftentimes it's with good heart, but again, notwithstanding someone who's got a proven track record. And everybody seems to know, I think, should know that where I fall on public safety, and certainly Mr. Chang is not opposed to even a condition on his license to do a mandatory 100% check of for the identification of any person on the premise, and I make an amendment to request to amend this to insert that in his language if it's possible. But I'd be a yes vote here with a condition that he have that in his usage license on this package store.
Thank you. Mr. Gutierrez, sir? Before we start getting into motions, Mr. Gutierrez?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a tough one for me. Typically, in a situation like this, my standard practice is to defer to the judgment and the wisdom of the assembly members who represent that community. However, and to the community councils. However, this body did not give that same consideration to the Northeast Community Council or to me on a recent matter. So I'm wondering if that really is the practice of the body. This operator is, by all accounts, a good operator, a responsible operator. In an issue, actually it was in that sort of diamond area where I believe one of his other stores is, the the first couple of months that I was on this body, we had an issue with another operator who wanted to add a licensed premises in that area, and the complaint was, well, we have too many already, which is one of the complaints that we've heard about this location. And this body was very clear, and some former members who are no longer on the body, that that's not reason enough to deny a license, that would be termed arbitrary and capricious pretty quickly. So honestly, I'm struggling with this one, Mr. Chairman. I haven't entirely made up my mind yet which way I'm going to vote, but I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Drummond?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I, too, am having a difficult time with this. I actually went and took a look at this mall, not in relation to this liquor license, but because Taproot left it and moved to the Spenard area, where their parking lot is full every night, and their parking lot's probably got, I don't know, room for 75 or 100 cars. They had apparently 6 parking spaces in this same mall, and I'm sure that the size of the operation wasn't much different from this proposed store, and the mall that this is proposed to go into is very, very tight. That is a big problem, because that location will continue to have problems no matter what kinds of businesses open in there. We on the Title 21 committee are dealing with this on a regular basis. There were not enough parking spaces in there in the first place, and a number of these businesses are open and are empty because parking is a serious issue, and this is a very, very busy section. As I said earlier, the hillside communities do not want retail east of the Seward Highway, and hence there's a lot of pressure on these retail operations in this particular location. There's nowhere else for them to go. I still don't know how I'm going to vote on this. I'm waiting to hear what everybody else is thinking on this issue, so I'd appreciate hearing some more. But when I learned that Taproot only had 6 parking spaces, I said, no wonder they moved.
Well, I've got a couple, ma'am, then we're going to go into motions.
Thank you.
Mr. Flynn, sir?
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'd like to offer a couple amendments.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. First motion, on page 2, following line 18, insert new language to read, mandatory check of all patrons' identification. I have a second, please.
Second.
Any discussion on that? This is mandatory inspection of all IDs. Mr. Flynn, is that correct?
That is correct. I've emailed the language to the clerk's office. So.
Is there any objection from the body? Debbie objects? Go ahead, ma'am.
I've read all the comments that came in, and have read the community council's position, and it seems to be a different concern than the ones that we've heard previously. For instance, the Northeast Community Council, there it was underage and inebriate, and here it seems to be principally location. So I'm just curious, several assembly members have kind of keyed in on this mandatory checking, which doesn't seem to address what we're hearing in testimony. If you could elaborate why you're bringing that forward, please.
Go ahead, Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Refer members to page 22 of our packet. Both Service High and South High students drive to this area every lunch. We do not want minors buying alcohol. It has been shown that with a high density of liquor stores in one area, there's a tendency to lower prices to compete. Young people are price sensitive, and the potential to drink is obvious.
Okay, thank you.
Is there objection to the amendment? Chris, do you object to the amendment? Not on the main issue, just the amendment, sir.
No.
That's approved, Madam Clerk. Next one, Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also on page 2, following line 25, insert a new section 4. It would read as follows. Unless renewed or extended by ordinance prior to October 31st, 2011, the provisions of this resolution shall expire on December 31st, 2011, without further action of the Assembly.
Is there a second?
Second.
And Mr. Chairman, we've heard community concerns both here tonight and in the information provided. by asking for a one-year review. I'm hopeful that if those concerns are not successfully resolved in that time, we can address it at that time.
Is your objection to that amendment? Chris, do you object to the amendment?
No.
Thank you. That's approved by the body. Mr. Flynn, anything else? Okay. That screen went crazy. Oh, I'm sorry. I know. Don't worry, Elvie, I'll get down to you. We'll now have the document in front of us as amended. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Flynn, for your amendments. But I'm really not sure how to vote, quite frankly, because we received correspondence from Mr. Chang, I believe his name is, and I read it, and he talked about what he said the conditions that he was putting on himself. He talked about it in a letter to us that we received a couple of days ago. But I also read the letter from HALO, that organization, and I'm also listening to my colleagues who represent that area. And my tendency is to support my colleagues who represent that area, because I would expect the same from them if it was a facility in my area. But, like I said a few moments ago, because of this petitioner's willingness to do the right thing, and because of the record brought forward by the president from the Sand Lake Community Council on the other two facilities, I'm just not sure how to vote on this at this moment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I've got a few more semi-members before I bring it up for a vote. Ms. Osiander, on the document in front as amended.
Thank you. I'm basically going at this point to support my colleagues from South Anchorage. The testimony, first off, I've gotten more negative emails and comments on this than I have in a long time. I also have tried to listen carefully, and it seems to me that virtually all of the testimony and comments have been specific to the location, which, according to many, is a very tight area for parking and congestion. Additionally, it's very close to residential. I'm particularly struck by the comment that the Community Council would be just fine if this were on the other side of the street, not adjacent to residential. There was some comment made about Northeast Council's objection. In a couple of ways, I think that I wish I'd been able to have the chance to do that one over, particularly in light of what occurred afterwards. But at that time, what I heard from that council was a specific concern about underage drinking and public inebriates, and what I'm hearing principally here is location. I have heard nothing said negative about this operator, and by all accounts, he's an exceptional operator. But our charge under a conditional use permit is also to look at location and the impacts of location on adjoining neighborhoods. So I'll be a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Honeman, on the issue in front of us as amended.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank Mr. Flynn for bringing out the proper verbiage of the amendments here, which I would support. It goes back to, I think, what Ms. Osiander just said, which is ironic that we're talking about an operation that if simply by likelihood 100 feet or maybe 200 feet across the other side of the highway or roadway there, the council, or at least some of the comments coming in, would say they likely would not object. Economically, I'm sure Mr. Chang is trying to make a go of a new business to include employing more people in the Anchorage economy and paying, as I might add, into the commercial property tax base for revenue purposes. So in this time, and at this time, I'd be a yes vote simply because I think, given the circumstances and the conditions that were amended into this particular licensee, if approved, gives us until December 31st of 2011, and then he would simply not be able to do business there if he were not keeping to standards of the community, and the community could certainly ring in between now and then.
Thank you. Mr. Gutierrez, on the document as amended in front of us, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't often weigh in twice, but since I was sort of on the fence the last time, I think it's time to get off the fence. As Ms. Osiander referenced, I'd referenced the situation we had with another operator in the Northeast Community Council, and the council was dead set opposed, adamant, and this body chose to completely ignore that. And you know, I'm a human being like everybody else, so there's a tendency for me to say, you know, if it's good enough for East Anchorage, why isn't it good enough for South Anchorage? I have made a conscious effort on that note to try to channel Ms. Osiander a little more, because she is a fierce and tireless and relentless advocate for her district, for her neighborhood, and I mean that. And
wow.
and
Thank you.
And well, you know, but
Debbie, it's a compliment from all of us, by the way, ma'am.
At the same time, you know, if it's good enough for East Anchorage, why isn't it good enough for South Anchorage? And there are a lot of problems that go with something like this, and so, you know, well, why not? Why not? What's good for the goose be good for the gander? And I think the problem with that is that as an assembly member, I don't just represent East Anchorage, that I represent all of the citizens of the municipality. While I am elected by the members of, or the voters of East Anchorage, while I wouldn't stomach something like this happening in my district if my community council was so dead set against it, even though, and that's no reflection on Mr. Chang and his operation. By all accounts, he's a very responsible operator. I shouldn't wish it on another portion of the city as well. So therefore, because this community so clearly is against it, Mr. Chairman, I will be a no vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Harriet, you get the final comment in, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I should have said this a little bit earlier when I quizzed the applicant about the number of employees. I'm really concerned that only a single employee will not be able to accomplish all the things that he is committed to accomplishing. I know what it's like. I've watched my son struggle with that, and it is not a pretty picture to be running a liquor store by yourself all day long. The other issue is the parking. This is an in-and-out type of business. This is not where people are going to come and park for a long time. That's an old mall. There's no other place to go. If people had to park across the street, they would just shop somewhere else. And again, it's no reflection on Mr. Chang. I have seen him at Sand Lake Community Councils for the last several years. He is a committed member of that community. But this is not really a good place for a liquor store. And I still think we should bring back the 100% liquor ID, and maybe we'll get some support, Mr. Gutierrez, but that's another issue. That's not for tonight. In addition, I understand completely the wishes of the community councils, having been on that side many times myself, so I too will be a no vote.
Thank you. Chris, do you want any last comments, sir?
It's been well covered. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, we're just going to have to vote. Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Fairjackson?
No.
Ms. Johnston? No. Mr. Trainee?
No.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Starr?
No.
Mr. Hall?
No.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez?
No.
Ms. Osiander?
No.
Mr. Birch.
Okay. Ms. Drummond? Ms. Drummond?
No.
Mr. Birch?
No.
Chairman, that failed. 2-0.
That motion fails on the body by a vote of 2 yeas and 9 nays. The item is done. Next item in front of us is item 14D, Ordinance AO 2010-66, an ordinance of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, approving submission by the Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility on behalf of the Anchorage Water Utility, AWU, and the Anchorage Wastewater Utility, ASU, of proposed rate changes to the Regulatory Commission of Alaska, Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility, a semi-memorandum attached, AM 513-2010. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and so in public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move the S version.
Moved and seconded for the S version. Any comments from Assembly members?
I would like to...
Go ahead, Debbie.
Thank you. I would like to thank the folks at the utility that I spoke with. My concern, and I saw from Mr. Flynn's question that he shared it, was that we hadn't yet seen a revenue requirement study. And as you recall, when we've approved these in the past, going to RCA, we've gotten to see the revenue requirement study. So if you note, the new Section 3 here is specifically notes that we have not seen that, and so I'm assuming that this would pass on to the Regulatory Commission and let them know that this was passed without a chance to review that study. I also would like to note for the body that when we take up AWU's budget, if we choose to not approve the full budget, then this can retrospectively be ratcheted down. So I'm hoping that everybody will take a real good look at AWU's budget when it comes to us to be sure that you're comfortable, because it is presented with this full rate increase included. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, somehow I didn't get the S version. I think several of my colleagues are also lacking that. Could we make that get distributed?
Mr. Primo, I apologize. It has a Section 3. I thought it had been passed out.
Yeah, the version I have, Section 3, is simply the effective date, I presume.
Okay, could I read you Section 3? And I think there's a copy coming.
If you would, please.
Maybe I'll let Mr. Primo read it.
Thank you, Mr. Primo.
Thank you. I'll read Section 3. It's probably my error, and I probably didn't coordinate well enough with the clerk to get the S version introduced, because Ms. Oceana did ask me to do that, and I erred. If you go to the original AO 2010-6, line 23, Section 4, Section 3, changed to Section 4. Insert on line 22, a new Section 3, which reads as follows. The Anchorage Assembly has not reviewed the final revenue requirement studies to be filed with the Regulatory Commission of Alaska, period. The final rate increase requested by the Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utilities from the Regulatory Commission of Alaska will reflect the rate increases included in the final Anchorage Assembly approved budget for Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility, period.
Debbie, would you make a motion to incorporate that into...
She did. She moved the S version.
Well, when I moved the S version, it had that. Would you prefer I not move the S version?
The copy?
The clerk's not seen a copy of it either.
I haven't either.
Mr. Primo,
is there an S version, Mark?
The S version was attached to the answers to Ms. Oceana's questions that were transmitted, I believe, yesterday afternoon.
All right. I'll tell you what, Mr. Chairman, if I may we postpone this item for a few minutes and make sure everyone gets the hard copy in front of them before we act on it?
I think so.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion to postpone this for 10 minutes.
Second.
That would be fine.
Thank you.
We'll be back with that shortly. Thank you. Okay, then the next item in front of us is going to be item 14E. Ordinance CO 2010-67, an ordinance authorizing a non-exclusive utility easement to Chugach Electric Association across HLB partial 6-016 for installation of electrical service and related facilities. Heritage Land Bank, and there's a similar memorandum that comes with it, AM 514-2010. Anybody wishing to testify on this item, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, public hearing's closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
And discussion from Assembly members. Please conduct a voice vote, Madam Clerk, because Chris isn't here.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Absent from the room.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Trainee?
Yes.
Ms. Johnston? Yes. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Birch?
Yes.
Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
Ms. Osiander?
Yes.
And Mr. Gutierrez is absent.
That is approved, 10 to 1, I think, Madam Clerk. That's approved by the body. Next item in front of us, item 14F, ordinance CO 2010-68, ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly, amending Anchorage Municipal Code Chapter 10.50 by adding a new section on area conditions for land use by licensed premises, introduced by Assemblymember Flynn. There's an Assembly memorandum with it, AM 517-2010. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward, state your name clearly for the record.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, is this the S version or we had titled
Paul?
14F?
When we get to that, we'll move the S.
Okay, very good.
Thank you. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no in public testimony is closed. What's wish of the body?
Move the S version.
Mr. Flynn?
Second.
Been moved to second to move the S version. Mr. Flynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This simply formalizes the existing conditional use permit standards for all downtown package stores so that when the next one pops up, I don't have to dig through all the paperwork to find them and tell them.
Now, does this go back to Mr. Teshi or beyond that?
Beyond that, to Mr. Wolforth, sir.
Yes, I served on the body with Mr. Wolforth. I remember that well.
Yeah. So it just simply puts it in code so we don't have to monkey with it again.
Okay. Please do a vote, Madam Clerk. There are no other members to discuss it.
Mr. Birch?
Yes.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Johnston?
Yes.
Mr. Trainee?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Ms. Osiander?
Yes.
Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
That was approved unanimously. Next item in front, item 14G, Resolution Air 2010-272, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage authorizing the Solid Waste Services Department to apply for a grant from the State of Alaska Energy Authority to fund the design and construction of a landfill gas project at Merrill Field to provide heat to the fire training complex, Anchorage Fire Department. There's an accompanying Assembly memorandum, AM 506-2010. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward, state your name clearly for the record. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, public hearings closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Ms. Osiander?
No, I just.
Anything, ma'am?
No, urge support.
Okay. Any discussion from Assembly members? If not, Madam Clerk, please conduct the vote.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Ms. Osiander?
Yes.
Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
Mr. Birch?
Yes.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Johnston? Mr. Trainee?
Yes. That was approved unanimously by the body. Next item in front of us, item 14H, Resolution Air 2010-273, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly appropriating $219,103 from the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. Thank you. This is for continuation of the Alaska Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and say no in public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion from Assembly members?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Honeman.
Just having used and utilized the services of this great unit over at the department, they're actually going around the community and educating and informing our public on the dangers and concerns that children have, and they're also conducting high-level operations in conjunction with regional as well as nationwide and worldwide investigations on. So I think it's a great use of the money. Urge support.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Ms. Osiander?
Yes.
Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
Mr. Birch?
Yes.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Johnston? Mr. Trainee?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, it's unanimous.
That was approved by the body. Next item in front is item 14I, and then we're going to go back to the other one. Item 14I is Resolution Air 2010-274, resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $179,990 from the Department of Health and Human Services.
Waive reading.
Health Resources. This is for use of automated external defibrillators, something I hope we never have to experience. But the public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying none, public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion from assembly members?
Same thing, Mr. Chairman, an excellent tool to be used. It's quite the shocking experience.
Okay.
That was terrible.
Madam Clerk, please conduct the roll
Ms.
call
Johnston?
vote.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Birch?
Yes.
Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
Ms. Osiander?
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Against the pun for the ordinance.
Mr. Trainee?
Yes. That was approved unanimously.
You should have said shockingly, yes.
I tell you what, Harriet, a few years ago when I was on the body, previous existence, the issue of tasers came up. And Janice Schamberg decided, I don't know how she did it, that if we were going to authorize the use of tasers, one of us on the assembly had to have it done to us, and guys would get to have it done to them. They hooked me up and pulled the trigger.
Is that what happened to your hair, Mr. Chairman?
You got it. But what I found interesting was not so much a shocking experience of being on the ground. It was when the kids that were there with me, my children, said, let's do it again. So if we're going to use a defibrillator, it's going to be you. Let's go back to item 14D. This is AO 2010-66S. We took a 10-minute break. We now have the S version in front of us. Anything else? I think there is a motion by Ms. Osiander to approve the S version. Mr. Flynn, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the added section and look forward to continuing. I believe Mr. Starr is tasking with looking at some of the enterprise fund budget, so I'll spend some time on this. A request, Mr. Primo, I'll give these back to you tonight, but once they're finalized, I would like a narrative describing them, because the numbers are good, but I'd like a narrative with a little more detailed information as to how you arrived at those numbers. And that's all for now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Madam Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote. And this is on 14D, AO 2010-66S.
Ms. Osiander?
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Trainee?
Yes.
Ms. Johnston? Yes. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Birch?
Yes.
Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
That's unanimous.
That was unanimous. Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Flynn. Next item in front is item 14J, Resolution AR 2010-275, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $700,000 from State of Alaska Department of Health. This is provision of public health preparedness and response to bioterrorism. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Hearing and say no, and public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second? Somebody? Okay. LB seconded that. Discussion from assembly members.
Mr. Chairman, just once again,
Mr. Honeman?
it's an excellent way to use the money to make sure we're prepared in case, in the event of something like this were to happen in our community. Urge support.
I agree, sir. Madam Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Mr. Starr? Yes. Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Ms. Osiander?
Yes.
Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
Mr. Birch?
Yes.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Johnston? Yes. Mr. Trainee?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That was unanimous.
That was approved unanimously. Next item in front of us is item 14K, Resolution AR 2010-276, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $296,714 from U.S. Department of Housing, and this is to divide the Link Homeless Assistance Project. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Hearing and saying no, in public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Moved in second. Discussion from assembly members. If not, Madam Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Ms. Johnston? Yes. Mr. Trainee?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Ms. Osiander?
Yes.
Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
Mr. Birch? Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
That was approved unanimously by the body. Thank you. Next item in front of us is item 14 now, Resolution AR 2010-277, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating a federal Health and Human Services grant award through State of Alaska Department of Health and Social Services in the amount of $572,250 to State Care Grant Fund. This is Coordinated Senior Transportation Services. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Hearing and saying no, and public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion from assembly members? If not, Madam Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
Mr. Birch?
Yes.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Johnston? Mr. Trainee?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Ms. Osiander?
Yes.
And that was unanimous.
That was approved unanimously by the body. Next item in front of us is item 14M, Resolution AR 2010-281, a resolution appropriating $21,835,000 of legislative grants. This is basically state grants coming to the city. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hear and say no, and public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Discussion from assembly members. Madam Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Mr. Trainee?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Wait, yes.
Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Ms. Osiander?
Yes.
Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
Mr. Birch?
Yes.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Johnston?
That item is approved unanimously by the body. The next one in front of us is item 14N, Resolution AR 2010-282, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $311,585 from the State of Alaska. This is to further augment mass casualty response capabilities of the city. Public testimony is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Hearing and saying no, and public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Any discussion from assembly members? Madam Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Trainee?
Yes.
Ms. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Birch?
Yes.
Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
Ms. Osiander?
Yes.
That was approved unanimously by the body. The next item in front of us is item 14O, Resolution AR 2010-283, Resolution Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $5 million from Information Technology Fund balance, Fund 607 to Information Technology. This is for the Enterprise Server Upgrade Project. Sorry. Excuse me. Appropriating $5,000 from Information Technology Fund, balance fund. Sorry. Thank you for clarifying. Yes, I did get a little carried away with the numbers.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is for the Enterprise Server Upgrade Project. Public hearing is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Mr. Michaelis, your light's on, sir.
Just a reminder that we're recommending postponing indefinitely, please, on this one.
You are?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion move to postpone indefinitely.
Well, I want to see if there's anybody wishing to
Oh,
testify.
that's true.
Anybody wish to testify? If not, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to postpone
Indefinitely.
indefinitely. Move to postpone indefinitely.
Is there a second? Jennifer seconded it. Is there any objection to postponing this item indefinitely? Seeing no objection, that item is gone. Will not be back in front of us.
Mr. Chairman, we're now, I
Thank you,
think,
Mr. McNeil.
think we're now ready to take up items 9. Shoot, I lost my addendum, Mr. Chairman. Hold on.
I think.
Thank you. We did 14D. It was 9D Delta 4 and 9 Echo 5, or Delta Bravo 5.
I may have lost mine too.
It's okay.
Okay. Item 9D4, semi-memorandum AM 551, 2010, sole source purchase at time of attendance, software licensing and maintenance support from Kronos Inc. for the Municipality of Anchorage. Information Technology Department, ITD, $467,012. This was on the new business item, item D4.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion from Assembly members? Paul, did you want to discuss this at all?
No, sir.
Okay. Is there any objection to approval of this item by the body?
Did you do 14P?
What?
Did you have public hearing at 14P?
No, because we were going to deal with this one item.
I thought you did
4D.
first.
I was going to deal with 4D.
9D4?
94.
What? Wasn't it?
Clerk's correcting me. I'm sorry.
No, I thought you had to deal with 14P first before you dealt with the
We did.
others.
We discussed it already.
Oh, you did. You did the public hearing yet?
Yes.
Too many things going on. Okay.
All right.
Well, no, you didn't have to vote on it, did I?
I didn't bring up 14P yet. ma'am.
But that's what I thought.
No, that was
That was
14.
Okay.
Let me do 14P. We'll get there, guys. Okay, 14P. Resolution Air 2010-284. Resolution of Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $457,950 of master
reading.
tax exempt. This is for the incorporation as a finance source for the electronic timekeeping project. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no in public hearings, close what's wish of the body.
Move to approve.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. This is item 14P. Madam Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Ms. Johnston? Yes. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Birch?
Yes.
Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
Ms. Osiander?
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Trainee?
Yes. Now, going back to our addendum to the agenda that was approved, going back to our addendum to the agenda, I'm looking at item 9B5, Resolution AR 2010-298, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating a contribution of $75,000 from the area-wide General Operating Fund 101, Employee Relations Department to the Information Technology Electronic Timekeeping Project. That was pulled by you, Mr. Flynn.
Right. Now that we have 14P done,
Yes.
it's appropriate to approve this.
Yes, it is, sir.
So,
Is there any objection to approval of this item by the body? This is a resolution for action. Seeing no objection, Madam Clerk, the minutes reflect that item is approved unanimously. We're now dropping down to item 9D4, under new business. Same memorandum, AM 551-2010, the sole source purchase of time and attendance software licensing and maintenance support from Kronos Inc. for the Municipality of Anchorage.
move to approve.
Second.
It's new business.
Mr. Starr.
Yep, we're all set. Unless there's objection.
No. Is there any objection to this item by the body? Seeing no objection, that item is approved unanimously. That takes us to the end of our agenda. We're now down to special orders. There are none. Unfinished agenda, there is none. Audience participation. Is there anybody that wishes to address the Assembly on any issue not on our agenda? Mr. Mayor? Okay. We're now down to Assembly comments. And Mr. Mayor, I'll let you chime in here, and then I'll work right around the Assembly.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the Assembly's support for the electronic time card process that you approved in the last several actions. Conservative estimates of about $1.2 million a year in savings, and we think it might be as much as double that. So it's going to be very, very significant savings for the municipality, and appreciate your support.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Debbie, any comments from the Assembly? No. Mike?
Yeah, just a very quick comment along the same lines as the mayor, just to thank the administration again for dragging the municipality kicking and screaming into the last quarter of the 20th century. But honestly, very honestly, doing a good job with that. Also, I told the mayor already, but great party Saturday. Great party.
It was a good party, wasn't it? Paul?
Yes, thank you. And I also want to echo my Mr. Gutierrez's comments. Thanks for getting it. I believe it's it was AWU for the electronic time cards. I hope that we can incorporate it in all levels of the municipality. I think it goes a long ways. I know it'll be a tough challenge, and looking forward to it. I guess just a few moments in closing, just to take pause at firefighter Andy Mullen is service-related. I guess we call it line of duty death with the fire department as a result of his toxic and fuming of toxic fumes, I guess, during firefighting. So sad to see a loss at the Anchorage Fire Department, yet another one, and looking forward to sadly being at his services this Friday.
Thank you. Ernie?
No comment.
Bill?
Just to thank Mr. Flynn for signing on to duty to help with the Budget and Finance Review. That's 6 members here and 9 on the committee, and good Assembly and administration support for that. So we got work to do between now and mid-December or the 1st of December, so better start reading your books. Thanks, Patrick.
Pat?
Should help me sleep tonight. Thank you, Mr. Starr. No further comments.
Just to my colleagues, I want to thank you guys. We've done a remarkable job this summer. We've been getting out here early. Unfortunately, we're now going into budget cycle. This is the last Tuesday I can guarantee you we're going to get out before 9 o'clock. We were elected to work as long as it takes, and that's what we're going to start to enter into as we get towards budget cycles. So bring your jammies, your sleeping bags, because we're going to have some long nights here. Jennifer?
I just wanted to thank our CFO for all the work she did to get us to this point of coming to the 21st century, and also for negotiating a great price. So thank you.
Elvie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank you and Madam Clerk for getting us out of here early all summer. And today, I personally bet that we were going to get out of here at 8:30, and booyah. Thank you.
Harriet, do you want to try and delay it for a few minutes so she's wrong or what?
No, I'll save it for the next liquor license application. Thank you.
If we could get a motion to adjourn in a second.
So moved.
Meeting's over with. Thank you. Sorry, what?
Are you going to have open comments?